Hello.
Hi, how can I help?
Hello.
Hey, Ms. Franklin, are you there?
Hi. Yes, I'm here.
Great. All right, we'll get started here in just a second. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. First, we'll have our motion to return to open session, and then we'll get started here. Do I have a motion to return to open session?
So moved.
Ms. Purcell and Ms. Bond. Any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Guidry?
Well,
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to certify closed session that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which the certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Roundtree and Ms. Purcell, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
abstaining, I wasn't present.
Dr. Guidry?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to expel student A?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Roundtree and Ms. Bond? Any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Dr. Guidry?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
6 in favor.
Motion carries. All right, our student representatives tonight are Marina Lee from BHS, and Mallory Akers is hopefully going to join us. Marina, would you read our mission and belief statements, please?
So the mission is MCPS is an innovative educational community. We value diversity and we are committed to equity and inclusion. MCPS empowers learners to realize success in an ever-changing global society through collaboration with communities, families, staff, and students. MCPS provides a safe, engaging learning environment and intentional exposure to positive social, emotional, and academic experiences. And for the beliefs, all students can learn in order to pursue their dreams. Schools are safe places of joy, wonder, and creativity. Every person deserves to be loved, valued, and respected. Kindness is an essential skill of a responsible, productive community member. The diversity of our community is one of our greatest strengths. All people deserve equitable access to opportunities and resources. Every child deserves an advocate. Honoring the voices of students and other stakeholders strengthens the school community. Open communication and feedback are vital to our growth. Learning and teaching are collective efforts that begin at birth and involve the entire community. Relationship building and high expectations are foundational to student success.
Great, thank you so much. Next up are our student representative reports. Marina, do you have a report from Blacksburg High School?
Yeah. The Interact Club hosted a dance for middle school students on Saturday. It was a successful event and was well attended. Several students competed in the Region Science Olympiad on Saturday and have qualified for the state competition. Indoor track competed in the Region 4 meet on Monday, and the girls are the region champs, and the boys finished in first as well and are also region champs. And then tonight is the second Battle of the Bergs for varsity basketball, and we held a pep rally today. And then we also picked up where we left off with our Spirit Week daily themes. And then the next club day, it was supposed to be tomorrow, but school's canceled. And then senior-directed one-act plays are scheduled to be performed this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday at 7, Saturday at 2 and 7, and Sunday at 2. Both swim and dive teams won the region meet on Saturday, and they'll compete for the state championship. 11 students will compete on Saturday, the 22nd, for the Regional Junior Science Humanities Symposium. BHS had 7 wrestlers qualify for the state wrestling tournament. Spring sports are about to start at Blacksburg, and we are looking forward to some warmer weather coming and watching our peers compete. Our DECA students will be heading to Virginia Beach later this month to participate in the state leadership conference. Scholastic Bowl won the super region and are advancing to states. MAC team has gotten off to a strong start, and they have one regular season match left and are hosting the Super MAC. Blacksburg Band is hosting the district concert assessment with over 20 schools. And STEM Community Night is Thursday, March 6th, and is an evening where the community, including elementary school students and families, are invited to learn about STEM opportunities at Blacksburg, and BHS students share projects they've been working on.
Great, thank you so much. All right, we don't have Mallory yet, so we'll go ahead and scoot on. Our next agenda item is public address. We welcome the opportunity to hear from students, parents, employees, and community members about education matters in this community. Now, board, we don't have anybody signed up tonight, so with your permission, I'd like to not read the rest of this. We don't have anybody signed up. Is that cool? That's cool. Awesome. That will save like 10 minutes as I get through all that. All right. Next up are our consent items. If no one wishes to move an item out of consent, we will consider these items approved. Okay, great. Do I have a motion to acknowledge receipt of the financial summary report for January 2025?
So moved.
Dr. Roundtree and Ms. Bond, any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Guidry?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. We don't have a payment of the bills tonight to approve because schools were closed for the majority of the week, so we didn't have any bills to deal with. So we are in our business meeting. Look at us. We're just rocking and rolling tonight. We'll start off with our report from the superintendent. Dr. Bragan.
Thank you, Chair Hudson. As the superintendent of Montgomery County Public Schools, I'm proud to recognize February as Career and Technical Education Month. CTE is vital in preparing our students for successful futures by equipping them with the skills, knowledge, and experiences needed for in-demand careers and higher education opportunities. We celebrate our dedicated educators, industry partners, and most importantly, our hardworking students embracing hands-on learning and real-world applications through our CTE programs. Together, we are building a skilled workforce that strengthens Southwest Virginia's economy and community. Thank you to everyone who supports and contributes to the success of career and technical education in our schools. Let's continue to inspire and empower the next generation of skilled professionals. I also want to take this moment to welcome our new CTE administrator, Ms. Megan Atkinson, to our team, who recently joined us coming from a neighboring district. Another thing I'd like to talk about is we're in discussions now and working with our facilities director, Mr. Harris, about solar power purchase agreements. And what that basically means is we would contract with a vendor who would install solar panels on our roofs and maybe on the ground where it's appropriate. And what they're doing right now is assessing which roofs are new enough to do that, because you want to do it on a roof that was recently replaced, so they would last 20, 25 years without having to replace the panels. And the idea with the power purchase agreement is it's zero cost to the school division, and what we get out of it, we lock into a rate that's lower than what we're currently paying for our electricity. And when we get the final proposals, we'll bring them to the school board. We could either lock into a permanent rate over that 20, 25-year period, or a slightly escalating rate, which would be significantly less than what we pay now for AEP. So we're working out the particulars. We're going with a few different companies to see what the best option is, but then I plan to present that to the school board in the near future, an opportunity to keep our electrical costs at a lower rate as we move forward. All right. I have one other thing, Chair Hudson, but it's not part of my superintendent's report. It's part of the next item. So if you want to go to the next item and then I'll read that, or should I just read the next thing? Okay. All righty. Virginia School Boards Association notices School Board Clerk Appreciation Week for February 17th to February 21st of 2025. Whereas school board clerks in each locality throughout our great Commonwealth are appointed by law to fulfill their duties and responsibilities And whereas school board clerks are responsible for keeping accurate records of the meetings and proceedings of all the school board, a record of all receipts and disbursements, and a record of all official acts. And whereas school board clerks perform such other duties in connection with the school business of his or her county or city as may be required by the school board. And whereas school board clerks maintain frequent contact with the public, including parents, employees, and the media, on behalf of the school board and the superintendent. And whereas school board clerks, in the performance of their duties, are often required to work extra hours attending school board meetings. And whereas school board clerks help to ensure students achieve their highest potential and provide an invaluable service for school board members and superintendents. Therefore, the VSBA Board of Directors does hereby recognize February 17th to 21st, 2025 as School Board Clerk Appreciation Week in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we'd like to recognize our school board clerk for all she does, Ms. Tosh Osborne.
Board, any comments?
Well, Tasha, I'd just like to say thank you for everything you do. I know it's a tough job, and how you keep us all straight, I'll never know, but you do, and thank you so much. And especially for the late meetings, I know you live a good ways away, and you don't ever fuss or complain. You never, even as much as I'm complaining about being here later at midnight, you've got twice as far to go, and you never say a word. And I appreciate that and wish I could be like you.
Tosh, I just want to say personally thank you for me. If it wasn't for you, I don't know how we would run. I know I personally bother you a lot with stuff. So thank you, and I appreciate all you do, and I hope you have a great week. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry. Thank you so much, Tosh. I can't say anything any better than my colleagues have already said, but we really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for keeping us all organized, all of our paperwork in order, and the meetings running smoothly. So, thank you.
Well, I'll personally say I.
Thanks, Tosh.
I'm sorry, Ms. Franklin, go ahead, please.
Thank you.
I would personally be lost without you, for sure, in terms of keeping me organized, my little script that I read here every meeting, and making sure the agendas are getting approved and all the good stuff there. So thank you so much. Okay, great. Next up, Katie Seidman, our MCEA president, will present an update from the Montgomery County Education Association.
Okay. My name is Katie, and I would like to thank you again for allowing me to be here tonight to present to you a report on behalf of the Montgomery County Education Association. I only have a few things to share with you this evening. First, I would like to reiterate that the MCEA's full support is behind the proposed change of the 15-step salary scale from our current 36-step scale. We know that there will be a lot of questions and concerns at the start, and that with any big change comes growing pains, but we are confident that this is a step in the right direction for MCPS. Our MCEA leadership had originally discussed this change with Dr. Bragan to begin with our 10-month employee group. However, we are also in full support of moving to compressed salary scales for all MCPS employees. We firmly believe that it will be incredibly beneficial for both our staff recruitment and retention. Secondly, I would like to thank the board for your questions and comments regarding school-wide testing. I think we can all agree that testing should provide meaningful and practical data that is helpful to staff and students while avoiding unnecessary time spent. I appreciate your dedication to supporting staff in best assessment practices within the confines of the requirements at the state and federal levels. Lastly, I would like to provide you with a brief update on our collective bargaining efforts for staff. For our administrative collective bargaining agreement, we are still working our way through language that can be agreed upon by both the MCA attorney and the attorney. It has been a slow-moving process, but we are encouraged by our continued communication and collaboration with Dr. Bragan that we continue to be on the same page, just maybe not speaking the same language just yet. In regards to our classified employee group, we will be starting negotiations for our support staff with Dr. Bragan in the next few weeks, and we are hopeful that they will be as straightforward and collaborative as our previous negotiations have been. Again, we appreciate the opportunity to address the board at this time, and we look forward to continuing this type of open communication. Thank you. Do you have any questions that I can answer for you tonight?
Board, any questions?
Thank you so much. So the comment you made about the testing, can you give a little bit more context for why you're highlighting that?
Because we've had several comments from the board about what is appropriate testing. Dr. Roundtree, Dr. Gitcher, you've said a few things in several board meetings. Why we have certain tests, which tests are required, which tests aren't, why we do the ones that we do, even if they're not required. Dr. Bragan and Dr. Wickham and I have talked extensively about these tests and just the purpose behind them, why they're so important. We've gathered some data, anecdotal data from our building reps about MAP testing specifically. Basically, we have to pick some. SOL tests are kind of a given at the end of the year. MAP testing was preferred over growth assessments for most of our schools, which Dr. Bragan has checked with the schools about, but also we have as well. The thing is, nobody really likes standardized testing. Our kids are not standardized, and so standardized testing does not necessarily work for all of them. However, we have to give something, and so we appreciate the board making sure that the ones that we have to give are practical and useful, and the data that we get from them is being used in a way that's going to support staff and students as we go along into the year. So again, I just wanted to highlight you all bringing it up, and even though we still have to do it, just making sure that we are doing it in the best way possible within the confines that we have.
Okay, just to drill
Yeah,
in
sure.
a little bit. So I understand the MAP is preferred by a number of people over the growth assessment. So because we are using MAP, are you saying that that the MCA and the building reps and the teachers feel that what we're doing now is an effective testing regime, or is the suggestion here that there may be still more than necessary?
I wouldn't say more than necessary because I don't believe that Dr. Bragan, the school board, and Dr. Wickham want us to do more than necessary testing. What I've found, again, anecdotally, to be is that the specifics of the way that those tests are administered may be causing some uncomfortableness just throughout the day. For example, in my school, even though Auburn Middle School, it's quite a small school. It still takes days to get through a MAP test. And at the bigger schools, it's almost a full week. But it's not necessarily the tests because, again, the MAP tests were preferred over the growth assessments. So I don't think most people are not wanting to go back to growth assessments, at least from the employees that I've talked to. It's more some of the procedural things about MAP testing. And Dr. Bragan, we haven't had an opportunity to have our monthly communications meeting, so some of this is news to Dr. Bragan as well. But we have been in communication about MAP testing specifically just to make things run a little bit smoother in the buildings during that time. But I will say Dr. Bragan and Dr. Wickham have given us the data or the requirements that we have to have these specific tests, either one or the other or a combination of these. And most of the teachers that we've talked to do prefer this combination of testing. We're just sort of looking at the procedural things that can maybe make it move a little bit smoother.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Ms. Pardon?
Thank you.
Ms. Bunn? Ms. Purcell? Dr. Roundtree? Ms. Franklin, any questions?
No.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, Dr. Tony Walker, our Director of Special Education, will provide a presentation about special education.
Good evening, Board Chair, Board members, Dr. Bragan. This evening, I'm presenting Improving Outcomes for Students with Disabilities. As you know, our students with disabilities are underperforming when it comes to state pass rates. So this evening, I'll present a plan how we're going to close the achievement gap and also improve, the achievement outcomes for students with disabilities. Tonight, I'll discuss our vision for students with disabilities. I'll discuss closing the achievement gap. Along with that, we'll cover foundation work that needs to take place, as well as instructional strategies that the Department of Special Education will implement in achieving this goal. Also, I'll discuss expanding the special education continuum, and I'll summarize our independent audit by Dr. Alicia Tate that was completed with our department as well. Our vision is to increase the performance of students with disabilities to master foundational and grade level skills to meet or exceed state accreditation pass rates. Also, to increase instructional support for all core academic subjects and expand the delivery of services to meet the unique needs of each student. So in reference to closing the achievement gap, we'll start with foundational work. We'll start with the IEP process because the IEP process is the driving force for students with disabilities. Also, our IEP goals and instruction are aligned with SOL standards. We'll make sure of that. We'll make sure that specially designed instruction and accommodations are incorporated into lesson plans. And also co-teaching, we'll make sure that co-teaching as a service delivery model is being implemented with fidelity. In addition, we'll collaborate to make sure that we do a re-examination of our lead special education teacher model to determine the effectiveness of special education staffing and resource allocation within buildings. We will do weekly monitoring for compliance for the following IP procedures, and this goes along with the IP process as well: eligibility timelines, IP development, transition planning, and also data collection and progress monitoring for progress reporting. We'll collaborate with the curriculum and instruction to provide ongoing professional development and special design instruction and engaging qualities. We'll offer professional development in the area of reading instruction, and I'll go into that a little more deeper in future slides. We'll following professional development sessions with principals, we'll visit classrooms to ensure focus areas are being implemented, and we'll do some of that with our instructional walks as well with instructional personnel, and participate in building level PLCs, professional learning communities, to support increased reading achievements. In addition to closing the achievement gap, we will embed modeling instructional strategies in real time with co-teaching pairs to deliver highly engaged small group instruction. We'll be going into the classroom, working with teachers, modeling the different co-teaching strategies, and also different instructional strategies, as well as those strategies that are learned through professional development with principals and principal meetings. We'll assist educational teachers with the interpretation of MAP data. Also, we'll help schools to develop plans to assist students with catching up on academic content skills when they are out on long-term suspensions. To help with disproportionality, we'll collaborate with school-based teams to develop and implement positive behavior intervention and support with consistency. We'll also implement this, help to implement the social emotional learning programs with students, and we'll collaborate with administrators on the consistent and appropriate use of discipline procedures and provide professional development with disability awareness, including all school-based personnel as well as bus drivers. With that said, I'll go into our continuous special education expansion. This is a multi-year plan covering 3 years. Although we have 3 years, it may take 4 or 5. It's a fluid plan with changes based on the needs of the school division. As as always, any time a student with disability participates in a continuum, the IEP team drives that process. Here's our special education continuum according to IDEA. I'll be focusing in on all those students go through the continuum from the bottom, starting with general education classrooms all the way to the top, which is hospital state operation programs. We'll be focusing in on the colored areas for our expansion for our school division. What we're asking for is to make this happen is to support middle schools. The reason why we're starting at middle schools is because middle schools, 3 out of the 4 middle schools are accredited with conditions or implementing improvement plans at their schools. They test the most out of all 3 levels, and also, too, they have the least amount of instructional time. Elementary has 90 to 120 minutes of instructional time for reading and math. Also, our high schools have 45 to 90 minutes for their reading or their English and instruction, but middle school only has 45 minutes. And so we're starting with middle school, then we'll move to elementary, and then we'll move over to high school. And I'll explain that as we go through the continuum with future slides here. In addition to that, our current co-teaching model is implemented by covering service time minutes only. And so they're not, we're looking to see if we can cover all 4 core subjects with these 10 teachers, so that way we can help improve student outcomes. Also, with that, it will allow for targeted and engaged small group instruction, because we'll have the gen ed and the special ed teacher in there for the full length of the school day, and not just for minutes. And so what we're doing now is we're participating in a co-teaching model with minimal staffing. And so the special education staff are kind of stretched to cover all 4 content areas. And so that is causing some frustration with them there. So we're asking to, add 10 teaching positions to the total number of teachers at the middle school level in order to provide the additional support for science and social studies or history. Also, with these 10 positions, it'll give an opportunity for full-day co-teaching, which will enhance the quality of the instruction, providing continuous support in differentiation of instruction. Also, it'll allow for opportunities to progress monitor data for all core content areas. And also, it'll increase the effective classroom management, because students will be more engaged, and if students are more engaged, then discipline referrals will decrease, and those office referrals as well will decrease. In addition to adding teachers at the middle school level, we'll add resource rooms across the division. And this will expanding the continuum of services delivery will provide additional intensive special education services. The IP team will determine how students access these resource classrooms. Resource classrooms will be supported by our department and monitored by our specialized personnel. In addition to that, we'll establish 2 resource rooms at Blacksburg Middle School, Christiansburg Middle School, and 1 resource room at Auburn Middle School and Shawsville Middle School. And the reason for the numbers there is because BMS and CMS are larger schools. What this will do is these additional spaces will be smaller settings, more targeted instruction, allow for academic, social, and adaptive, and to work with behavior goals. Delivery of instruction in a smaller setting, and it'll be designed to meet each student's need in a safe and predictable environment. In addition, we'll establish 1 resource room for Margaret Beeks, Gilbert Lingus Elementary School, and Auburn Elementary Schools, and those are based on the trends from this school year of students having difficulty accessing the educational setting or the general curriculum. And so also the delivery of instruction, again, is in a smaller setting, and also it's designed to meet the needs of each student as well. Here's the staffing that we'll have for each of the resource classrooms. We'll have a special ed teacher, 2 paraprofessionals. We currently have several paraprofessionals. They will support these resource classrooms. They'll be pushing in Many of the students that have paraprofessionals also will be accessing these classrooms. So those paraprofessionals will follow them and support the classroom there as we have it. Also, a registered behavior technician will provide additional layer of support for students in the resource room and also the general educational setting. The reason why we have them supporting both is the goal of students moving down to the special ed continuum is to move back to the general educational setting as soon as possible. And so we want to provide those educational strategies to those gen ed teachers so to help maintain students in those settings. Now we'll cover what 2026-27 will look like as we expand our continuum. And what we'll do is each academic school year, we'll come to you and present to you what the upcoming school year will look like in reference to expansion of the continuum. We'll establish one resource room for the remaining elementary schools, KIPS, East Montgomery Elementary School, and Harding Avenue. Again, tailored instructional delivery to meet academic needs for students. Also, smaller setting, again, as well, for safe environment. We'll also establish one pre-K through second and one 3 through 5 division hearing classroom for students with hearing impairment. Currently, we do not have a program for students with hearing impairments. We have to send our students to Roanoke, down the mountain, if they need specialized hearing impairment, beyond what we can provide. Also, we do have interpreters for students as well, and so we're collaborating and we're blending and having our hearing programs come together and to serve one division hearing program versus having several interpreters work with students in several schools. It is cost effective to do one program and have students being served in that program, receiving the supports by interpreters and the teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing. Otherwise, we end up getting several deaf and hard of hearing teachers and several interpreters, and those are contracted services which are extremely expensive. We'd rather put forth the money into a certain program to make it robust for students with hearing impairments. And also, again, as I mentioned, division hearing classrooms will prevent students from out-of-district placements. In addition, we'll establish 2 division special ed classrooms to support students who require a higher level of behavior intervention beyond what is done or supported at the homeschool setting resource classroom. Staffing for this classroom will consist of one special ed teacher that is skilled with behavioral strategies, working in settings with extreme behaviors. We'll have 2 behavior registered technicians and 1 paraprofessional. We'll also, a board certified behavioral analyst will support this classroom. This will be a program within a school, and so that way we can, we'll determine where this will take place as we work through and meet with schools that have space. Special ed division classrooms will support students transitioning from private day schools. There'll be use of step downs, especially the 2 intensive classrooms, the K through 2 and 3 through 5. Both special ed division classrooms will be monitored, again, by our department as well. Here's what 27-28 will look like. We'll go to the high school. Many of our high schools do have resource classrooms already established and adaptive classrooms already established. So we'll look at each classroom and each school, and we'll base that on established classroom based on their needs at that said high school. Again, we'll have RBTs as well to provide additional layer of support for students in resource classroom settings. That is our continuum. And next, what I'll do is I'll discuss our audit, independent audit by Dr. Alicia Tate. On the heels of our DOE audit, we did participate in an independent audit by Dr. Tate. Dr. Tate, she interviewed select principals, and she also surveyed principals and staff throughout the school division by surveys. Her audit, really yielded 3 specific, areas that were identified: ongoing professional development, skilled and endorsed staff used resourcefully, and expanded special education continuum as well. She agreed that our continuum does need to be expanded. Here are the positives based on the administrator survey. Positive were co-teaching and collaboration. You saw that as a positive. Support and adaptation, efforts to adapt and improve scheduling, caseload management. Professional development and training was a positive area. It was you saw that ongoing PD and training were seen as beneficial, and these were by administrators. Administrators felt supported in their roles for the special education department. Areas to grow that you saw was caseload and resource management. Some administrators stated they were high caseloads and need for more support staff. Shared ownership of inclusion, that not all staff share the ownership, the belief that all students can be in inclusive settings. And also the integration of student with disabilities can use a smoother, smoother way of getting students in and be educated, as well as exiting out of the classrooms. Professional development training was seen as also a need, especially as instruction and co-teaching practices. And behavioral and emotional supports, addressing the social, emotional, and behavioral needs of students with disabilities as identified as a challenge. According to the audit, Dr. Tate, she surveyed the staff, and here are positive from the staffing. Strong co-teaching partnerships, dedicated and caring staff, small caseloads and individualized services, areas to grow, staffing challenges and turnover, inconsistent co-teaching and planning time, behavioral and emotional challenges, and inadequate resources and training. The report Dr. Tate completed validated many of the areas of improvement that were currently addressed with division initiatives. So with that said, currently professional development, she identified that was an area as well. We have in our current practice is we work with collaboration with special ed, curriculum, and student services with special ed instruction, engaging qualities, executive functioning, training, and behavior strategies for students with disabilities. The collaboration with Bradford University is an ongoing PD for new and provisionally licensed teachers in the area of reading and, of course, the science of reading. Professional development on coaching for special education lead teachers. As I mentioned that earlier, was an area that we're re-examining. And added special education teachers to select schools based on student need to reduce special education teacher caseloads. Dr. Reagan did provide additional teachers to bring down high caseload numbers earlier this school year for at select schools. That has been positive. Also, Division BCBA training of paraprofessionals with behavioral strategies, and they've had one training this year. They're scheduled for another one in March. We revised the paraprofessional handbook and interview questions. We work with Human Resource Department on that. And also, we've added additional RBTs to support schools and students with high-intensity behavioral needs. That's the end of my presentation for outcomes for students with disabilities. Are there any questions that I can take from the board?
Thank you so much for that presentation. School board, who has questions? Who'd like to start tonight? Who wants to be first up?
Okay. Thank you so much for the presentation, the work that went into this. So I have a few questions. So I know one of the strong recommendations was to improve the continuity of services and to, I know there's been a lot of conversation about what the inclusive model looks like, and clearly the plan works to address that. So one of the things that came out of the review was that there is a perception that there's understaffing with special ed. And one of the things I was hoping that you could help to address is that the comment that was made during the assessment that the staffing levels are substantial and they exceed the recommended class size. And so the plan that you have for 3 years is dependent upon adding staffing. And one of the recommendations was to do an audit of current staffing, how they're being used. Did your office undertake an audit of the staffing to address what seemed like maybe not an adequate use of current staffing?
That is the reexamination of our lead roles and how they support the staffing within the schools, and there also those special education teacher roles. So that is currently in process now.
Okay.
And so once we complete that, then of course we'll provide the information to Dr. Brigham so he can provide that to the board.
Okay. And one of the things that we've talked a lot about is the relationship between performance and discipline. And one of the things that struck me about the review, but also I'm wondering about the plan, is how does this plan address the disproportionality with discipline that's affecting the performance of those students in our classrooms currently?
Yes, I mentioned that we'll practice positive behavior intervention and supports with fidelity. That encompasses all of the disciplinary actions that takes place in the discipline process, including students who are wraparound services for students, students who are needing, counseling, functional behavior assessments, behavior intervention plans, students who are, we're inviting physicians to meetings, we're inviting outside counselors to meetings, anything that would support the student that, at the table discussing, so we're all hearing the same thing at the same time. That is the key to working with a student. So we're looking at the whole child in that perspective. So when I stated that we would do support positive behavior intervention supports, that is what I mean there is looking at the full scope of how we address the student. The IP team will guide that as well to make sure that those things happen and take place, and the progress monitoring, which is something that we worked on. When I mentioned that we'll close the gap with the foundational areas, that's what these are, these foundation areas that we'll close the gap on. And we'll also help support administrators as well as assistant principals with the discipline process. I mentioned also students who are out of school suspensions will develop plans when they come back, because when those students come back, they're expected to test. They're expected to jump back into instruction. So we want to make sure that they are caught up as well. But in reference to the disproportionality, all the things that I did mention is to make sure that we support all the MDR processes, the suspensions, the why suspend, and to be creative. There are certain things that, according to the state, according to our code of conduct, that we have to hold to: weapons, drugs, and bodily harm. Those, of course, we have to make sure we deal with those. But we can also practice, alternatives to suspension as well. And that's at the latitude of the administration. And so we will support that as well. We'll support Mr. Howard's work with administrators, making sure that, administrators are looking at students individually, but at the same time, making sure that they are holding them accountable and also working towards their success. So it's everything that's available at the school level that we can help to work with students and to improve students in reference to disproportionality.
Okay, thank you for elaborating. So a lot of ideas in there. Is that going to make its way into a structured plans because one of the things that was highlighted was the inconsistency across the division. So we got this presentation that covers 3 years. Is there going to be, what you just said, is that going to be translated into an actionable plan that the whole division, that covers the whole division, and that all principals, all teachers, everyone will have access to be able to have consistency, but also to track some of these initiatives?
We are currently working with myself, my department, Student Services, and Mr. Howard are taking a look at the Code of Conduct, the discipline matrix, and to make sure that we update that and that we make sure that that is being consistently used across the division. That's one of the driving forces for, to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and discipline, using the same measures in reference to discipline. We will also track that from my office, all the initiatives that I talked about, we'll track that as well alongside that. And so, but those are the measures that will be used to help make sure that we're on the same page for everyone.
Okay, so that's ongoing. So
Yes.
will that make its way into a plan that's comprehensive?
When we finish the review of that, I'm sure that we'll come together with, a product that will be used to review with principals first and APs, and then present it, of course, approval for Dr. Bragan and Dr. Wickham as well. But that's what we'll use. So we're moving towards that at this point. So we are looking to do that.
Okay, so that's wonderful. From my perspective as a board member, when we talk about having a 3-year plan, that's what I would expect that would be in that plan, because to have a 3-year plan, and I know there's so little about discipline, and that's such a central concern, and the division seems like that should be in there. And so I hope that you come back with a comprehensive plan that details actionable items to ensure consistency across the division, so everybody's on the same page. I'd like to see more direct intervention with discipline. Yeah, but thank you. And just another question, what's the difference between the resource classroom and the labs that were presented to us in a previous presentation? What's the
yes.
relationship of the one to the other?
They're one and the same. The academic labs, we're renaming those to resource, so that way we are calling all the labs resource so that way there's no confusion, because the resource is in the, of course, the IDA, continuum. But the first proposal that I presented, this is one and the same. We've expanded on that proposal and to include the other resource rooms as well as the division classrooms, the hearing program. So that was revised. So all of that is flowing together. It's one and the same.
Okay.
Yes.
And I know that, and this is the last point, I know that we're working on renovations for planning for multiple buildings. These resource classrooms, are they part of that planning process?
That's something that I'll have to discuss with Dr. Bragan and get back to you on that.
Okay.
Some of the classrooms have already taken place now. They've already been developed. For example, CMS, they've already identified there are 2 resource rooms in their building. BMS already identified that as well. When I did the academic plan, the first academic proposal, 9 schools were identified. All of those schools have resource rooms already. So we're well ahead of what we're doing with this process. We're just expanding outward based on the needs of the students and of the division.
Okay, great, thank you.
Ms. Pardon?
Thank you. Appreciate the information. And not to sound the same as Ed, but 2 of my questions were on basically what he touched on, the discipline and the personnel. Thank you for answering the discipline. I know that's hard. We're seeing a lot of more of the ones with the IEPs and stuff in front of us, and it's kind of, it's heartbreaking, actually. So hopefully we can figure out what we need to do on that. And as far as the personnel is concerned, I know you're saying that we're meeting the need now, but as we continue to get more and more students that could possibly have an IEP or a 504 that we're seeing a definite increase in, are we providing, are we at the point now to where we're able to provide an aid without any kind of issue to the ones that need it now? What's your thoughts on if that number continues to increase? Because I know these teachers are hard to come by, and I know you had a lot of other teachers and people coming in to help with different things that you have in your plan, which I think is great. The personnel is kind of an issue for me. I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that, to see if we can get where we need to be with that part of it.
One of the reasons why we're doing the expansion, and the detail we're doing it is because of the increased numbers.
Right.
Increased numbers of student with disabilities, and based on their needs and based on, their different backgrounds, dual diagnosis, mental health, combined with students with their own, special education category can be a challenge. Challenging to teachers, so these resource rooms will provide that, access. It will provide the additional support and instructional support, for those students as well. So that's why we're doing this at this time, based on the expansion of those students.
And I had noticed also that you were tying the personnel in with, you were also looking at, I think, possibly collaborating different classrooms to meet the needs, not only of the IEP students, but to help with the needs of, the regular students, because I know we have the combined classrooms now, and apparently we're not meeting some needs that we need to be meeting where they need to be with some of those students. So were you looking at possibly, it looks like here, at least at the elementary level, possibly the middle school level, of creating somewhat of an environment to where there would be more one-on-one and type to kind of help that come along with
yes.
them?
The goal is to, if students require one-on-one services, mainly those students have mobility issues, they have vision issues, they, kind of have several, serious behavioral issues. So those who are needing that type of assistance, that's when the positive behavior supports come into play, is to address a lot of those behavior aspects for students who are requiring additional adult support. And so currently we have additional adult support process that will, take a school through specific, avenues to determine, if a student requires that as well. So also too, resource rooms, will help in reference to that. They're staffed, well-staffed. We'll have 4 staff. That brings down the ratio, which can support students, coming in. The goal is to have one-on-ones for students who really actually need them versus those who have behavioral issues. That's when you boost up your wraparound services for those students. And so with this process, with the expansion, we look to decrease, in one-on-ones for students so they can be supported in the resource rooms, by the RBTs, by the specialized staffing, special education teachers as well. But we'll make sure, we always make sure that we look at individual students on an individual basis in reference to what they need. And if students require one-on-one, then we make sure that we provide that.
Okay. And I commend you on trying to get them into smaller groups to provide that need and what we're looking at, because I honestly think that'll potentially help a great
think so,
deal.
too.
So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Bond?
I think my questions have been answered. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Purcell?
Thank you so much, Dr. Walker, for all of your work on this. I had asked, this might be more of a question for Dr. Bragan, at a previous meeting, if it's possible for Dr. Tate's review to be made public. That was a request from a community member.
We could definitely do
Be
that.
able
We
to
wanted to talk
add
about
it.
it first in public, and I think we've done that here. The school board members all have a copy of it, so we could PDF that and put that wherever you would like that to be as part of the notes for this meeting, on the website, wherever we need.
Great, thank you so much. I did have another question just about, I totally understand the rationale of phasing in changes, needing to support middle school students first makes a lot of sense. There's so many changes that happen at that age for lots of different reasons. And then to go back and address elementary and then high school, although then that kind of leaves high school for a while. We had a request during public comment from a community member in May or June of last year who has sent all their children to Montgomery County Public Schools. Their youngest, the 2 oldest had graduated. Their youngest had been an MCPS student for most of her academic career. Because of the severity of her disabilities, the transition to high school was really, really difficult. And even adjusting to a reduced schedule, homebound was not working, and the parent decided to homeschool the child. What she had said when she came to public comment that evening was to ask to allow her student or her child some access to, it was unified PE specifically. I know that our policy is to not allow students access, homeschool students access to MCPS classes. But in the interest of inclusion, trying to do what we can for all students in Montgomery County, given that high school is at the end of the revision stage, and I realize that we can't have every piece of information here all the time, but it's kind of the least fleshed out program that we have. I was hoping that we could consider some kind of revision or modification of that policy in very limited ways, so that students with IEPs who may struggle with just some of the structure in their high school years could still have access to classes like Unified PE, Unified Theater, something like that.
I do know what you're talking about when reference to that situation. Again, that was discussed, and it was up to the board to change because it was a board policy that didn't permit that at the time, and so it was that's something that the board will have to discuss and allow, and so and we act based on that decision. And so that situation was discussed with both parents, and so it ended up being a board decision because our current policy did not permit. And although our division is very supportive for Unified PE, we have it at at our schools, and so, but when students are again homeschooled, that changes that, and so I would have to wait for you guys to decide on that before I act on that, and so.
I understand. I've just been kind of waiting for the right time to bring it up. And we've had some private discussions about it as well. I know it's a big cultural change for MCPS, and there are it's complicated. I guess I'll just leave it there, but I wanted to mention it. And just the last thing, Dr. Walker, kind of a housekeeping thing. I didn't notice the elementary schools in the Christiansburg Strand. Do they already have the resource rooms?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Dr. Roundtree.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. And to Ms. Purcell's last question, does Price's Fork Elementary School also has the resource room?
Yes, they do.
Because that was not in the list. All right. On your slide deck, school-based administrator survey summary and teacher and staff survey summary, is there a reason for the discontinuity where areas to grow under the school-based administrator summary, one slide up? It says high caseload numbers were a concern, and then on the next slide it says small caseloads and individual services in positives. What's the cause of that discrepancy?
Yes, that was within the study itself. We did see that was a discrepancy with, and so what I can interpret from that was students move in and out of our school division, and so certain caseloads can increase based upon that factor. Some schools redistribute the caseloads if certain case managers' caseloads are high. But if they're all high, and I think that's when Dr. Brigham did step in and allow for certain staffing to be added to bring down caseloads. And so some of those schools that were mentioned there is some of the schools that we added additional teachers to bring down the caseloads. If we run our numbers now, we have very low caseloads across the division. The only school that has some higher caseload is Blacksburg High School, based on our numbers, and so we're looking to address that as well. But we have some of the lowest caseload numbers within the region, if not the state.
Just on that, sorry, almost called you Dr. Guidry, Dr. Roundtree. My interpretation of that was that that's the survey that was done by Dr. Tate, and she surveyed teachers and administrators, and on some of the issues, they had very different perspectives. Speaks to the continuity problem that was already mentioned, that there has to be that consistency across the division, so it's not open for interpretation. I believe we don't have enough staff. I believe we have too much staff. Well, what is it, right? So those perceptions, for people are reality, right? That's what they believe. But the disconnect between the teacher survey, again, the ones that participated and answered, compared to the administrators is different in a couple areas. That's a concern as far as the continuity across the division that we want to look at holistically. That was my interpretation anyway.
And then just some numbers. In the report from Tate, since it'll be public, some schools have a 13-to-1 ratio of students to teachers for spec ed, and some are down at 7-to-1. Why is there such a big discrepancy from one school to another?
There's a couple of reasons for it. You want to answer that? Or you want me?
I can lend to that, hopefully. It's based on the student's disability area. You can have a staff member that have 5 students with severe autism, and coupled with mental health and other areas. And so, again, it's the severity of the need for that staff person and working with that student on those caseloads. Usually the caseloads for those are students that are in adaptive, supported classrooms, the resource rooms as well. And so, and that's what we want to get to, is working with smaller classroom settings. So what this will do is, as we move forward, the teacher of the resource rooms will become the case manager of those students in that resource room. And so, and the reasons that they're there are because they exhibit, behavioral challenges, other challenges, and so, they become the caseload, and that will happen across the division as well. And so that's how they'll be supported in those classrooms. Also, our lead teachers that we're working with, they have a small caseload because half the day is geared towards them completing their administrative paperwork. So they carry a small caseload as well. So that's why you're seeing those numbers and those perspectives. But the majority of our students are in the gen ed classroom settings. And so, but that's the differences on those numbers.
Yeah. I mean, it might have to look at it a little bit closer. For our elementary schools, there also seems to be a correlation between Title I schools having a higher ratio of students to spec ed teachers compared to the non-Title I schools.
And that's something that we did see that we will address as well. And that's why when I spoke about looking at our eligibility process and working on those foundational areas, so that could take place in there. So are those students being identified, appropriately, or are in other schools, are they under-identified? So that's one area that we need to address to look at as well.
But I was referring to the number of teachers to students that were being staffed. Our Title I's are understaffed compared to our non-Title I's.
And so that's, again, we will look at that as well in reference to the caseload perspective. So that will come out in the discussion that I spoke with Dr. Dietrich about in doing that analysis. And so we're in the process of doing that analysis now. So that will flesh out, and we'll provide that information to Dr. Bregan to provide. So hopefully that will answer your question when we look at that.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Franklin, any questions?
Yes. So you mentioned several times when it came to accountability and making sure that we are consistent across the district, and you would say we. So who is the we that is going to be monitoring the process and making sure that we're being consistent and that students are getting the resources that they need?
That will, of course, will start from my department as well. Myself, supervisors within the department, and we also collaborate with student services as well as the instructional hall in reference to providing that professional development to those staff within the classrooms. The certain processes, we'll cover the IP process for accountability. Also, the discipline we'll make sure that we're working with student service to make sure that we monitor and track that as well across the division. So all of those, all departments will work collaboratively together because we all touch the same student in the same classrooms. So that's why we are pushing towards collaboration and working and wrapping around services around students. And so that is the accountability. That's one of the major areas that we do have, this year is accountability. So that has to be across the board. So we're looking to make that across the board, non-negotiable as we move forward.
Okay, so that's good to hear. I still have a concern because we have a history of this, not just with our spec ed students, that folks still don't communicate with each other well. So at what point will those things happen? Will it be once a week, once a month? When will the information, the data be pulled together so that you can see the big picture as to what's happening across the district?
It'll be both weekly and monthly. I know my department will be doing weekly monitoring, and the other departments are, they go out as well weekly, and they go out monthly as well. And I'm sure, that they will, I can get information from them and what they see. The instructional walks will help out a lot, with special ed going out with instruction and also the collaboration with the discipline. But it will be weekly and monthly in reference to, how things are going. I know that Mr. Howard's department, the tiered intervention specialists send him data and what's going on in the buildings, and so that's discipline data, attendance data, and so forth. And so that's coming forward as well. And he's also tracking that disciplinary, we're tracking along discipline as well from our end. And so together, we'll converge those. And we collaborate a lot during leadership and discuss, discipline as well. Matter of fact, we discussed discipline this morning at our principals meeting. Mr. Howard went over discipline. Also, Mr. Garrison went over discipline, and also this discipline process, went over that at the secondary breakout this afternoon. So we're starting to come together in reference to trying to tackle things from all ends instead of just trying to leave it, with the school. We are trying to make sure we support our principals, our APs, our students, and all special education staff in reference to do that. A lot of this is hands-on. Not so much micromanagement. It may seem that way some, but in order to to provide the level of support that's needed to make these things happen, that's what we're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Walker, for your presentation. I guess I had a couple questions as well before we ask for any other questions. But I guess since we're in budget season, I just wanted to be clear. So the 10 additional teachers that you talked about in the middle schools, are they included in the budget already? Are these existing teachers that we already have, we're reallocating?
To my understanding that they are in the budget for approval to this evening.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Awesome. In terms of the resource rooms, I have one up here where you're talking about, for instance, one would need one special ed teacher, 2 paraprofessionals, and an RBT. Are those using existing staff, or are those additional staff that will come later?
It could be both. It could be existing staff. What we'll do is we'll look for those staff that have specific endorsements that we can move into those classroom settings while we hire for the kind of like a flip situation. Mm-hmm. Also, too, we do have staffing that can be grant funded as well. So we got to make sure we take a good look at that, because I can only do so much funding for positions because of maintenance of effort, and so we'll utilize grant funds to especially for some of the intensive classrooms, these programs within a school programs.
Okay, great. And then one other question. Ms. Franklin kind of stole my we question because I had that same thought in my head, but kind of pulling that string a little bit more. the piece in your presentation that I didn't see a lot addressed was mental health support. And, and obviously we kind of touched on the discipline piece too, right? So in my mind, they're kind of three legs of the same stool, right? If we don't get one of them right, the other two aren't going to work either, right? And so I know we're going to have a presentation coming up on discipline. We could probably have a presentation at some point on mental health support, but I agree with Ms. Franklin. I think the key is making sure that all three of those efforts are being coordinated, not done in stovepipe. So, if there's a plan that comes up that, obviously talks about the specifics of each one of those things, but really focuses on the integration of all three, because I think that's the key.
I would agree with you on that, Board Chair. And just along the lines of some of the things that Dr. Walker presented on tonight, one of the things I think is really important is when he mentioned and Ms. Franklin mentioned the we, right? Until all these kids become our kids, nothing's going to change. This can't be a special education problem. This can't be a problem endemic to just one building or Title I students or however you identify. And we're really trying to change that perception that this is our problem. This isn't a problem with special services. This is a division problem. It's Bernie's problem. It's the principal's problem at every building. It's our general ed teacher's problem, because for too long, we point to whatever department where we're having the issue and say, that's for you to fix. And I've said this since I came here. Until those kids, whatever that means, become our kids, nothing will change. So I applaud that idea that we're all held to that same level in accountability, and what Ms. Franklin identified is true. It has to be we. We means we, everybody, right? The second thing is regarding discipline, and Dr. Walker had a specific piece on discipline, and I asked him to take it out. So that's my fault, Tony, that you, at this point. And the reason was twofold. I don't want to focus on discipline as it relates to what people often believe discipline means, dealing with things after the fact. How do we do that? Students don't typically misbehave in classrooms where they're actively engaged in the learning process, where they feel they're participants in what's going on, and they feel what the teachers are providing them is helping them to become better human beings and move more towards their goals. That's really where we need to focus. And that's not just an issue with special education. That's an issue with everything. It might be more pervasive with some of our children with special needs because it's really difficult to provide that meaningful instruction that's engaging children that have a lot of difficulties already, right? So I think the focus should be on how do we do that? And that's the small group instruction, that's the ongoing professional development, that's the continually checking in with that. And the other piece why I asked Dr. Walker not to specifically put it in this was, we shared a pretty comprehensive plan that Mr. Howard, myself, and the team are working on for discipline. And that's for everybody. That's just not for the kids that are identified as Title kids or kids that have 504 needs or kids with special needs. Because when we do that, we don't fix it. So I do plan when we have time to present that with Mr. Howard on what our overall plan for discipline is. So I take ownership that I asked Dr. Walker not to focus on that. Thank you.
Our board, we've gone around once. Any other comments? Yeah.
Thank you for that. I mentioned that because I don't want to target special ed students as particularly prone to discipline, but we know that one of the reasons why we're seeing as many special ed students is that they may have a behavioral issue, and that there are certain things that the division should be doing to support those students that's not happening consistently. So in terms of like functional behavioral assessments, are those being done? And how do we know if they're being done if we don't know if it's not being tracked? So I agree, it's all of our problem, but we do know that special ed students need additional support beyond just what the teacher in a general ed classroom is able to provide, even though there needs to be that close collaboration. But I don't know if you're able to answer this one follow-up question that's separate from the plan. And so special ed services relies on resources. Just a really quick question. I don't know if you can answer this question off the top of your head, but how many dollars does MCPS receive for special ed from the federal government? Like if there was a reduction in funding, say from the Department of Education for just even special ed, so let's not talk about any other grants or any other programs, what would the impact of that be if you're able to answer that question on this division? Because there's lots of conversations about what's happening at the federal level. And I think it's really helpful for our community to know if all of a sudden the Department of Education doesn't have funding for us, what would be the impact here in MCPS? Do you? Because I know that there are pass-through funds that we have, those grants that we apply to, and I think, was it 1.5 million?
2.5 million.
Sorry, yeah, that's right, 2.5 million.
It would be devastating for us.
It would be devastating for us.
For our programs, yes.
Yeah.
We would have to seek funding elsewhere. I don't know where we'll get it. We would have to approach, I'll have to approach Dr. Bregan. He would have to talk to you guys about that. But it would hurt programs. It would hurt how we serve students. But we will try our best to find the money. We're in the student business, and so but it would be detrimental for us. That as well as we receive another grant as well. To work with students with intensive needs, and that's about $800,000. So a lot of it, that would be detrimental to us. It would hurt us.
Okay, thank you so much.
Board, any other comments?
Yeah, just for clarity, that 2.5 million, that is only for the spec ed department.
Yes. That's the IDA.
There's a significant additional amount of money for the district that coming from the federal government.
Our total Fed amount is about $5 million for our title programs as well as our special education IDA funds. About $5 million.
Yep. And then, let me see, what was it? Oh, one last item. Dealing with discipline, heading discipline off at the early stages is great. We also need to look at doing something about when our students are out of the classroom for discipline issues for 10 days at a time for 4 different occasions before coming to an expulsion hearing. Keeping a kid out of a half of the semester or the first half of the year for 40 days of that and expecting them to be engaged in the classroom is unrealistic.
We're already working on that.
All right, thank you.
Board, anything else? Ms. Franklin, any more comments?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Walker.
Thank you so much.
All right, next up, Helen Fotinos, our Administrator of Gifted Programs, will provide a presentation for the New River Valley Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities.
Good evening, Chair Hudson, Board, Dr. Bregan. It's nice to see you. That name really rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? So I'm here to share with you information regarding the proposed Governor's School for Humanities and the Arts. This proposal was actually sent to the VDOE last week, so we're waiting on next steps for that. So some of the things we'll go over this evening: timeline and partners, what the student experience could be like, logistics for us, and then finances for us. Just a brief overview of our timeline so far. Last spring, President Brett, I'm not going to say his last name correctly, Danilowitz. He goes by President Brett, just rolls right off. Asked several superintendents to pull together a group of people, including parents and a school board member, to discuss the possibility of standing up this governor's school. So he led an informational meeting late May of 2023. And over the summer, they pulled some documents together. 2024. Thank you, Laura. Look at my dates up there. They're just all in line. Apologies. So last May, 2024, it feels like a long time ago. In the fall, then we met again. They sort of had come together with a proposal, and then they asked for feedback from the school system. And so we were able to give them some good feedback, some important feedback based on the K-12 experience that they do not have. And then this February, they submitted the proposal, and then hopefully this would open in August of 26. Sorry, I despise animation. I didn't know that was there. So these are the planning committee members. You can see that there are staff from Radford, staff from New River Community College, and then individuals from Floyd, Giles, Montgomery County, Pulaski, and Radford. So that's the boring stuff. Let me tell you the interesting stuff about what a student might experience if we decide to participate in this. So the purpose of this is to create a governor school where students that are highly talented or gifted in the arts and humanities could receive instruction and participate in activities that wouldn't normally be available to them at their home schools. So students who demonstrate and established or emerging abilities in the arts and humanities would be offered course experience that would enrich their educational experiences. So this would really fill a void for Montgomery County. We don't have, we have a governor's school for the STEM, science and mathematics, but we do not really have opportunities for students who are highly gifted and highly talented in the arts. These are the core values that Radford has highlighted as the foundation of this program. So creativity, a commitment to working hard and collaborating in active learning. When students participate in this, there are 2 tracks. So they can participate in the arts or they can participate in humanities. The main focus is sort of an integrated experience so they can develop skills. Oh, no problem. Sorry, distracted. Totally fine. So there's 2 pathways being proposed. Students would begin as sophomores. And as sophomores, students in the arts would take a fine arts English class, a world history class, or participate in an artistic ensemble that applies to their area of learning. The humanities students in their sophomore year would take a humanities English class and a world history course along with the Socratic seminar. Students would also get to work with local businesses and local arts organizations to learn more about their field and to connect them into our local community. So as I said, the sophomores would get accelerated coursework. This is slightly different than the model that's at the Southwest Virginia Governor's School. The Radford staff felt like it was really important for students to come as a sophomore and receive sort of some accelerated learning to get them prepared for junior and senior level coursework, because the courses that juniors and seniors would take would actually be courses, Radford University courses. So that's slightly different than at Southwest Gov School, where they just go for junior and senior year, and they're only participating in accelerated high school courses with other high school students. So as sophomores, they would go and sort of bridge the gap between that freshman year experience and then their junior year. Juniors would get to take 2 university classes in their discipline of interest, so that would earn them 12 university credits, and also would get to do seminars and mentorships with local businesses and arts organizations. As a senior, they would get to take 3 university courses in their discipline and participate in a capstone class. So that would get them 30 college credits before leaving high school, which is tremendous. Here is what a sophomore year schedule could look like. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they would have coursework. Tuesday, Thursday, they'd either participate in their ensemble or participate in a Socratic seminar. So that's very college feel, getting our students prepared for that opportunity. And this allows them to sort of line up with the college schedule that's available at Radford. As juniors, they would take those 100 level classes and work on their projects on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then as seniors, they could take those 2 100 and 200 level classes and work on their capstone project. All classes that the sophomores would take would be held in Kyle Hall. So they would get dropped off in one place, they would stay in one place. This was a concern of mine when we were talking about this planning was, are we turning 15-year-olds loose on a college campus? So they've kind of found a way to make sure that those students stay a little bit more isolated and safe. And in their coursework, they're only taking courses with other high school sophomores. So they're not being introduced to that college group just yet. The juniors, the arts-related students would be at the Arts Center for Adaptive Innovation and Creativity. The humanities students would be at Hemphill Hall, and then all students would have access to the library for their research. So total estimated capacity, we would start with 40 sophomores, and then we would add 35 juniors, and then that would roll into 35 seniors, kind of assuming that there might be some attrition. And that would be across all 5 of those school districts. So it's not a large program. Logistics for selecting students, and this is something that's laid out in the proposal that all school systems would have to adhere to, that students would have to have some prerequisite coursework that was as defined by the governor's school. They encourage all students to apply. You know, at MCPS, we don't identify students as gifted in the arts or humanities, so a gifted identification isn't necessary. Students must be enrolled in one of the participating school districts to be able to participate, and then a common application would be presented to all students, and a data review would be done by a committee. They also ask that all students have a 3.3 at least in their arts and humanities or social science courses, so just in that core area. They would have to respond to a prompt, have high school transcripts and teacher recommendations, and they would have to sort of choose a pathway before they applied. If they were to apply to the arts, they would have to participate in an audition or an adjudication of their portfolio. Timeline on that would be similar to the Southwest Virginia Governor's School. Applications would be available in the fall, late fall into winter. Students would adjudicate, and then in March they would be told whether they were accepted, and that would help with the course selection at their local high school. So that kind of aligns with the process that happens at high schools. And then the important topic of the evening, finances. So for Southwest Virginia Governor's School, we pay tuition for those students to go. We pay for 20 students about $77,000 or $3,850 per student per year to participate at Southwest Gov School. That's about half of the cost of it, or the money that the state gives us per student. And that would be the same for the Radford program. That would be $3,850 per student. We could have 20 seats. That is up to us. That is up to you all to decide how much financial commitment, if we decide to participate in this governor's school, you know, how much do we want to spend. We do have 20 seats at Southwest Virginia Governor's School, so 20 seats were allocated to us, but we do not have to use them all. I think also if we had more students interested and they had space, they would be willing to offer us more seats. The other costs associated with this, we would have to provide transportation for our students, and that already is happening with Southwest Virginia Governor's School. And we come to the question portion. What can I answer for you?
Thank you so much. Ms. Purcell, do you want to add anything just to kick off? Put you on the spot?
I wasn't expecting this. It's just been really exciting to be able to be part of this process. The enthusiasm from the folks at Radford University is palpable. It's extremely exciting to offer something new to students, and we don't have opportunities at this level. So I'll just leave that there. I'll take my turn with my question.
Change the order this time. Dr. Roundtree.
Thank you for the presentation. I don't have any questions at this time. Thanks.
Okay. Ms. Franklin, I'm looking at your seat, so I'll call on you now.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions and concerns. So with this starting, especially in the sophomore year, who would be, I think I read in the, 65-page document, that there would be meetings with students and possibly their families to talk about the governor's school and the requirements. And I was glad to see that you did not have to be identified as gifted, because as we know, especially African American students are underrepresented when it comes to our gifted programs. And I have a real concern that this is what will happen now too. So how is that going to be balanced so that we make sure that all students are going to be prepared for the possible opportunity to attend the governor's school? And how are we going to do development with our teachers and administrators and counselors to make sure that any biases related to race or socioeconomic status will not play a factor into not allowing the opportunity for all students.
That's a really great question. I can speak to the process that we have in place now for Southwest Virginia Governor's School, that the application process is multifaceted. So, students are asking for references from teachers. Assessments are given that are as culturally representative as possible. The essay process is blinded, so the committee that reviews the essays does not know anything about the student. I make sure that any identifying information is removed from that. We do our best to make sure that the Southwest Virginia Governor's School application process and the Summer Residential Governor's School processes are as bias-free as possible. Now, obviously, I can't remove all bias, and as you stated, how are we going to prepare students for this? I think that would be my biggest concern, is what are our opportunities that we're offering students at the middle school level so that they can be prepared to apply for this high school program. That is something I'm going to have to spend a lot of time thinking about and working with a lot of teachers and counselors in order to make sure that we're offering opportunities to all students at the middle school level, even down to the elementary school level. I think it starts very early. But I agree that there is concern there. There's always going to be some level of unfairness because, if we're applying for a program that requires intensive dancing and your parents can't afford to send you to dance classes, we don't offer that at MCPS, and I'll have to figure out how to bridge that gap. I don't have an answer for you yet, Ms. Franklin. I'm sorry.
Well, I appreciate that last statement because that is a huge piece of making sure students are prepared, that they have some type of access to be able to develop their skills or an interest in something they've never had the opportunity to engage in. I just have a huge concern that, quite frankly, this will just be as disproportionate as the Southwest Virginia Governor's School is when it comes to African American students and our students who are socially, economically disadvantaged.
I completely agree. All I can say is we're going to do our best to prevent that and keep that in mind as much as possible as we move through this process.
Thank you.
Dr. Guthrie.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm grateful for Radford for all their investment in this. I do have some questions, but I just have an overriding question that's probably maybe not for you, but more for other people who've been involved in this. So I'm a governance guy, and so the application has been submitted, right? One of the questions that I had is, it says it's approved by MCPS, and the board never approved anything.
Does it say approved or supported by?
No, it says as approved by Floyd County, Giles County, Montgomery County, Pulaski County, and Radford City Public Schools. So when I read this, I was like, I have some questions, but they're kind of moot because at this point, the application's in and it's saying that we approved it, but the school board never approved it. And this is not on you.
No, that's totally fair though.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you what happened in the committee meeting in October. He said, would you be willing to support this plan moving forward? And everyone present on the call said, yes, we would support it. So we didn't use the word approved and no one asked us on that, so.
Yeah. So was there a draft that circulated? Because one of the things that would have been really nice is to actually see the draft before it's submitted to VDOE so that there could be input from the school board as a board to get that buy-in. And so I'm glad that there are opportunities, but in terms of governance, I'm reading this and I was like, this was not approved by MCPS. It was like there were people who signed on, but this went to VDOE, and so VDOE is under the impression, or would be under the impression, that the school board had approved this, and I'm looking, and that didn't happen. So
I
it's
think the impression would be that the representatives from the divisions that were there approved it, not necessarily the school board. And as a superintendent, I definitely approved it. So I'm not sure where that lands, but the representatives from each of the schools that were present did approve moving forward. So I'm not sure that that necessarily means board approval. Because we come back and say this has been approved, and you could say we don't want to participate, we can't participate.
Well, at this point, we would be pulling out of something that said that we approved. This is, for me, like a governance issue versus an administration. Like, the administration administrates and does daily operations, but in terms of governance, that's the role of the school board. So if we're submitting a governance document to VDOE as a division, that should be coming from the school board as far as I'm concerned. But so that's not a question particularly for you.
So do you not support it?
Well, it's a governance issue. It's just purely like it's a school board, like the school board discusses.
But if you
approves.
support it, it's moot.
No.
No, I disagree with that also.
Okay. Like I said, the representative people at the meeting were asked if we approved it, and we were representing our position, and we said we did. Whether that meant school board approval, I don't think it did, but if anyone needs clarification, we'll share it with them on that.
My takeaway was that members from MCPS approved the plan to be submitted to the VDOE for comment. So at this point, the VDOE is still going to come back and offer comment. And then again, once it is supported by or approved by the VDOE, then I would bring it back in front of you and ask, do you all support MCPS participating and paying for this? So that was my interpretation of it.
Okay. I was just working off the documents I saw from the time frame that basically the application's submitted, and then it's up to VDOE to approve it or not. I mean, it could come back, but basically at this point, that train has left the station if this has been submitted to VDOE.
Laura, help me remember this. President Brett said that there was like this template, but it was from like 1980 something. And at the very beginning, one of those very first meetings. So they were working off a very old template that I think the last time a gov school was approved was the one in Pulaski.
The last time a governor's school was approved it's the one that's at George Mason. This was like 2011.
But I have a memory of him saying there was a very old template and application process.
Yeah.
And so he was following the steps and the application process as presented from the VDOE.
Okay, I'll just ask one content question, something you can focus. So who's directing the research for the students? Because that's a big component often of governor's schools, is to be able to work on projects. And the way that I read this application, it seems like there's a director who would coordinate kind of like internships, but who directs the research for students?
Couldn't speak to that specifically, but I can make an assumption that it would be the professor and their coursework. That's how it works at Southwest Gov School, is that, the teacher that they decide to do their science fair project with is kind of directing the research. So there is a Gov School, RU Gov School director that's a full-time person. And then there's 2 teachers that are high school licensed teachers that work with the sophomores. Everyone else that works with the students is a Radford University faculty member.
Okay, because I know the reason why it would be good to have some input is that, for instance, at Virginia Tech, if a faculty member worked with somebody, it would either be in the context of a class or they would do an independent research, independent studies class. And so when I'm looking at this, I was like, there are suggestions there's going to be independent research, but if it's not within the context of a classroom, a class that they're getting credit for, that means that's labor somebody's doing, and I don't see it anywhere in the proposal. So that's one of the questions that I had, of just how to operationalize this.
Yeah, that's a great question.
It seems like that's not in the plan at this point. But.
I think that's a tomorrow problem.
Okay, thank you so much.
Ms. Pardon?
Thank you. This is a lot of information and a lot of hard work, so I appreciate everybody that had a part in it. I'm excited for the students who will be able to take up on this, hopefully. I did have one functionality piece concerning, if I'm looking at this chart right, correct me if I'm wrong, when they leave the school for the school day, how long they're there and when they get back. I know it's going to be different depending on what level, at the high school level they are, as far as classes and what's needed and things like that. But are they planning on being gone just during the lunchtime hours? Or is this going
So
to
they're
interfere
gone-
with like some of the regular school classes
They'll
possibly?
be gone from first block and second block. So they're gone in the morning, very similar to Southwest Gov schools. So those kiddos actually start class at 7 a.m. and get back a little bit before 11. So these friends will not be there quite as long.
Okay.
But what we have found and traced out the pathway is that you can accomplish a advanced diploma, the requirements for an advanced diploma, because here they would get their humanities classes. So they would have their required government, civics, English classes, and then they'd go back to their home school for their science and social studies and electives. So they also were very clear that these students would still get to participate in any kind of ensemble or, school-based activities that had to do with the arts. Any kind of after school, they want to be on the track team, all of that still happens. So they're just gone in the mornings, Monday through Friday. They come back for probably the end of second block into lunch, and then they would have third
But
and
like
fourth
you
block.
said, those core classes will already have been.
They're going to have any kind of English and
Realize they were starting that early. So that
this one.
answers most of my.
They get to start at 8, so they get to sleep in a little bit more.
Okay,
Yeah,
because I was
Southwest
going to
Gov
bring
School-
up summer, but I know with the professors at Radford, that might be an issue, trying to do this, because I know that the other ones, there was a lot of them that happened over the summer, so I didn't know.
That's summer residential Gov school.
Okay.
So that's
So this would
similar
be
but
something.
different.
But different, okay.
This is throughout the school year, so starting August through
Would
to
it
May.
go the entire year? Is that correct?
Yes.
Because it would have to be counted as a college course, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I thought.
There would be a little bit of maybe wiggle time at the end.
I didn't know about illnesses or like makeup, just
Yeah.
your normal things like that. I know inclement weather's on here, and I think sickness might be in here too. I just haven't had a chance to read through it all. But I didn't know how much of a hardship that might be on them trying to make up that class and then still have these classes here to make up.
It
and
will
that
be
type
a
of thing.
challenge, but
Right.
I can speak better to Southwest Virginia Governor's School that they do a great job of making sure those students are
And I
supported
know they do a lot
throughout.
of online stuff as well.
Yes, they
so
can offer online
if
options.
need be.
Or, you can see in the schedule too, there's that Tuesday, Thursday time where they
ma'am.
might be able to have, an office hours with that
Okay,
professor
that
to get
sounds
caught
good.
up.
So let's say we have some students from every school.
That's the goal.
Wouldn't that be great? I know buses are going to take them. Do we know, we may not have gotten this far. I don't know, are we going to have bus drivers that are going to volunteer to be able to drive during those hours? Will we have one bus that goes, picks them all up, or will we have buses coming
The
from
way
each
it works
school?
for Southwest Gov School, again, and that's all I can speak to right now, we have a dedicated bus driver.
Okay.
He is lovely. So he starts in Eastmont
Okay.
at about 6:20.
Okay.
But again, they start class at 7 a.m., so we would bump that an hour.
Okay.
He picks up this 2 students from Eastmont, and then he meets all the other students at Christiansburg Middle School.
Okay.
Because of the high school traffic issues. In the past, he would have gone to Christiansburg High School. So students' parents either get them to CHS or CHS at the time, CMS currently, if the students can drive, there's a special place for them to park. So they meet the bus there. And then Mr. Billy takes them to Gov School. He waits at Gov School for them, comes back. That frees up his afternoon where he can run buses for special events. He does a lot of the athletic buses for us. So I actually met him at an athletic event recently, and he was like, "You're the Gov School lady." I was like, "Yes, I am." Students are allowed to drive to Southwest Gov School. That is something we will have to decide.
Okay.
And Radford will have to decide. Are we going to let them drive to campus and park? My inclination would be no, but that's just me. Parents also could bring their students if they felt strongly about that.
So we do have some other
but,
options.
you
Okay.
know.
Wasn't sure how we were handling taking them from multiple schools and things
So
like that.
he
so.
picks up at Eastmont, meets everybody else at Christiansburg, and then on the way back, everybody gets dropped at their home school or at Christiansburg to get their car.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you.
Ms. Bond?
That was, sorry, that was one of my concerns is the time, because for the governor's school, I think that's what separates a lot of students not doing it, is because of the time. I mean, it sounds great to say, oh, well, they can do their sports and this and that. No, it's not that easy.
No, it's
You
not.
know, I know my boys were invited, and they were like, Mom, there's no way you can get up at 5 and have football practice at the end of the day and get your homework done. They couldn't do it. So they didn't even want to attempt trying. So that was my only, so I am glad it starts at 8, but because I've always had an issue with it starting at 7, because I think that takes out a whole group of kids that can't do that. They just can't function that long of a day and do everything they need to do.
I will say, and I didn't know until
Limits.
this year, that 2 of the Blacksburg High School students were struggling with a little bit, and Southwest Gulf School accommodated them, and they didn't start till 8. Their parents were responsible for getting them there.
Right. I
But when we had that conversation, we found a pathway forward. I've just finished having all of our informational meetings for Southwest Gov School, and I'm very clear about that with students. Like, you got to be there
Well,
early.
and Radford's a little closer, but with Pulaski, that's a 45-minute commute for Christiansburg, much less Eastern Montgomery and Blacksburg. So it really
limits
a whole group of kids. So I am glad to hear that it's 8 and it's a little closer. I think that will open that door a little bit more to students that might not could have done the Pulaski Governor's School.
Right, I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Purcell?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mrs. Fotinos, for your presentation. I did just have kind of more of a comment than a question, because some concerns were brought to me. I am, again, just super, super excited for this potential opportunity for our students, and I hope that it's something that can go forward. It's been a very long time since a new governor's school program was approved in Virginia. I don't know how many other applications there were from 2011 to now, but it's just a really long time. My concern, however, and Mrs. Fotinos mentioned that the intention is that students can have this opportunity, go home to their home schools, and still participate in all manner of classes, but I would want to make sure that we're not cannibalizing our own arts programs because students have access to this. A big school like Blacksburg and Christiansburg, we have more than 1,000 students at both of them. Are smaller schools. If several students are participating, they're all in a certain arts track potentially. It just makes it a lot more fragile, and I think it's important to have those opportunities for all students. So,
I agree.
Thanks.
I will say there is the opportunity for summer gov school. So if students felt like they didn't want to be leaving their home school, or we didn't want to leave, we had that concern, they do have an opportunity to go to Radford in summer for 3 weeks and participate. So, other options.
Okay, great. And the only note that I'll add, just going back to the conversation earlier about maybe trying to figure out ways to prepare students earlier to potentially be a part of this program. I will certainly advocate for the Director of Fine Arts position that we have in the current budget. Be a great person to work with you.
Yeah.
To help figure some of that out, right?
I love that. Thank you.
Great, board. Any other questions?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. I have a couple of comments.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr.
So, I agree with Dr. Guidry, and I raised this point from the very beginning that the governance piece of this has been a problem. Now, I also find it kind of offensive that after the fact, board members are asked, so do you agree or you don't? Then it's mute. Well, that's not mute, because there is a governance process that was bypassed. Quite frankly, hearing about the solar project, I have a concern with that also, because after the fact, after money and time and effort has been put into analyzing and putting presentations and things together, it's going to be brought to the board to say, what do you think? that process should be, it comes to the board as a presentation to say, this is what we would like to do, this is the impact it would have on the district. Does the board agree with us moving forward with this instead of after the fact? And then board members looking like, if we disagree, then we're a problem. The issue is governance and the lack of the board being informed about projects and programs until after things have already started to be developed. That's a problem.
I think that's a great conversation for us to have at our board retreat to work out some of those mechanics.
I just want to respond to something on that, Chair Hudson, because y'all pay me to run this place. And part of running this place is seeking out innovation, ways to save money, ways to do different things. And I'm not going to ask y'all for every single decision we make every day. And if that's what this board wants, you got the wrong superintendent. I'm going on record saying that. We make 1,000 decisions a week. We've done decisions to save money in healthcare and medication, prescriptions, curriculum. When those things require board approval, we bring them. When they don't, we will not. And every decision I make is not going to come for board approval. So I'm going on the public record and saying that. If that's your expectation, you have a superintendent that you paid to lead the division. If you don't want me to lead it, show me the door. Because I'm not asking every decision, like solar, that's not a decision for the board to weigh in until we have something for you to look at. Unless this board collectively is telling me, Bernie, don't do anything innovative. Don't move your foot forward. Don't do anything until you get our approval. Because we will never do anything then. If this governance issue was a problem with the Governor's School, the New River Valley Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities, I'll take ownership for that. That wasn't my expectation when working with the team and working with Dr. Danilowitz or the other school boards that participated. If I got that wrong, I apologize to all of you. I've never been at a governor's school before. I've never developed it. I didn't know the process. But I shared it with you. Ms. Purcell shared that we were participating in it, and we were looking at different options and going down that road. I talked about solar. I talked about esports. I talked about doing things, moving forward, trying to take this division to the next level. And I'm not asking permission for every one of those. I'm sorry.
So let me be clear. You're just going to bystep the board when it comes to issues in the district. Now, it would be just absolutely ridiculous to think that I am saying every little thing that happens in the district you need to bring to the board. But when it comes to projects like the solar, the governor's school, the program at Auburn around gaming, and I could name a couple more, that the board gets the information after things have been started in place. And the majority of those impact budget, and that's our responsibility. And we as a board need to know what's going on before things move in a direction that, okay, so if you don't like it, tough. So you're saying you do like it, so then it's a moot point. No, it's called governance, and the lack of it is becoming a problem.
I would really like to request that the board have this conversation with support from VSBA at our next retreat, which we have scheduled, so we can work through some of those mechanics. Because I do think that there is a discussion we need to have around that very point in terms of where the superintendent's responsibilities start and the school board responsibilities end. And I think that we don't have agreement on that, and that's okay, because it's America, and we can disagree. But I think we got to figure it out, and I think it would be good to have some outside assistance on that.
May I just add one thing?
Sure.
Just to clarify, I am not requesting that every single decision that is made by the administration comes before the board. I don't want to give that impression at all.
I appreciate that, but again, I think the question is, which things do need to come before the board,
I
right?
think the board needs to be
And I don't think we
educated
have
in that
consensus on
policy.
that, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, there,
and we'll figure that out together. It's fine.
there's definitely some fact-finding mission that the administration has to take before they come to the board. And something like getting some estimates from a company on solar to offset our electric power before coming to the board is probably innovative and okay to do. But, and we don't, I mean, personally, I don't want to necessarily halt those types of activities. But, and even in the next 3 months, I don't want to halt those types of activities from occurring, because some of these opportunities can be here today and not be here in 6 months. So,
But I think we owe it to our superintendent to agree on that, so we don't have places where school board members, and fair to ourselves on the board, to make sure that school board members don't feel like information is being withheld, superintendent doesn't feel like he's got to play a Mother May and everything, right? We just need to draw that line very clearly so we don't have to deal with these kind of questions again. And we'll do that, and VSBA will help. Ms. Sotinos, you're just right in the crossfire. Is it fun?
I'm having the best time. Thanks, y'all.
You bored? Any other questions? Too late. She's gone. Cool. All right. Next up is policy 1-2.5, compensation and expenses. That was presented as a first read at our February 4th meeting, brought back for approval tonight. Do I have a motion to approve the policy as presented?
so moved.
Second.
Dr. Roundtree and Ms. Parton. Any discussion? Okay. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond,
Yes.
Ms. Franklin,
So I'm going to approve this because I believe it is needed, but I have some real concerns if during our budget process, our employees who are not making the money that they should be making, and then the board gives themselves a raise, that will be problematic for me. So I'll say yes at this point.
Dr. Gitchery,
Yes.
Ms. Parton,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson,
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Next up, the administration will have a discussion on the topic of minimum wages for our staff, exactly the point that Ms. Franklin brought up.
I shared with all of you some of the information that we got regarding, there was a discussion, I think, at our last board meeting about what would be the budgetary implications if we raised our minimum wage, which currently now is $15 for all of our employees, right? Any full-time employee, the base salary minimum is $15 per hour. So we did share some information with all of you on what that would look like, and we wanted to discuss that, obviously, because the next item is the school budget. So if there were changes to be made, we would have to make that motion on the budget. Hopefully, we get to vote on today. So if you have the data in front of you, we had very specific information related to if we went up $15 an hour, that would cost the division. You have that in front of you? Because I'm trying to find it. I have it here somewhere.
$16 an hour is $150.
$150,000. There you go.
$17 an hour is $525,000. $18 is $1.1 million. $19 is $1.75 million. $20 is $2.45 million.
So
And go ahead.
good. No, good. We brought it to y'all for discussion.
Yeah, the lowest full-time salary for the county is $16.29. So it'd be interesting to know what $16.29 would cost us. It's an extra 29 cents. I assume it's somewhere between $150,000 and $525,000. Be weird if it wasn't.
We can provide that information to you.
Okay, board, so
So
Go.
the lowest was 16. Is that what I read as well?
The lowest
For the county.
full-time is $16.29. things like camp counselors and stuff get paid $15 minimum.
Is there any more that you all want to present before we just start discussing and asking questions?
That was it.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Do you happen to have an Excel cell that you can change to 1629 and give me that number in like the next couple minutes?
Not the next couple minutes, but we can provide that to you hopefully tomorrow. I do have the detail, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have a budget vote today.
Yeah.
Okay, board, who wants to start with additional comments or questions? Dr. Roundtree, your mic's already on, so I'm gonna call on you.
All right, so with the items that are available, I would very much be in favor of raising the minimum to 16, and I would really like to go ahead and raise it to 1629 so that we're meeting our county's lowest pay. Hopefully they don't then raise their lowest pay and we're still behind. They can always do that in their budget too. But 1629 is probably going to hit us somewhere around $250,000 to $275,000 in increase.
So, but at this point, nobody is making less than 15 an hour.
Yes,
Correct.
that's correct.
Because that
yes.
was what our last thing that we said we wanted raised to 15. Okay. Sorry.
Dr. Bergen, you look like you have a comment, or are you just smirking at me?
No, I was trying to run the numbers, like if you divided the difference there by 100, right, would be 100 cents. It's 108,750 in addition to the 150 to go to 1629. You're the math guy, Dr. Roundtree. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's an estimate. It's not going to be exact.
Right.
Yeah.
So that 1629 would come out to 258,750 about.
Right. Not a bad estimate. 250 to 275 was the guess.
Not bad at all.
Ms. Purcell?
I appreciate everyone who worked to provide this information for us. I would be open to, I understand Dr. Roundtree's logic. We also have the number in front of us of what it would take to bring the lowest paid employees up to 16. I think because we have that number definitively, that might be the one to add to the budget if other board members were in support. Or maybe this bleeds over into budget question or budget discussion. I don't know.
Ms. Bond?
I agree. That's what I could support.
I could
Ms.
support
Barton?
that as well.
Dr. Guitry?
What was it you were just saying? I'm sorry, again. The 16, that's what I thought, versus the 1629. I think 16 is good. I think, it'd be nice to do 1629. I mean, one of the things just to point out, I mean, we are already adding between the 3% and the adjustment with the scales, $3.8 million. If just looking at this, the 3% is 3 million, 4.55, and then the 419 for the other salary scale adjustments. So we're already making significant adjustments to, correct?
It's more than that, Dr. Guitry. The 3% is all in, is 4 million. And the salary guide adjustment is almost $1 million. So that's almost
sorry,
5 million.
I was looking at the wrong column. So
it's almost 5 million.
Okay, almost 5 million. Thank you. My apologies. So that's already a significant increase. So I think, a modest increase to the hourly makes sense. We're also asking for the free meals. That's also a priority. So that's one of the reasons why I think a modest one is good. And then we can make more adjustments in the future. But this is already a significant change with the scales.
Ms. Franklin?
Okay, so as I've stated, these folks who are making $15 an hour, that is not a living wage. And these are positions where we are constantly trying to find ways to hire and retain employees. And then we have to go back and figure out, well, we've got to do more money. Well, this is the time that we do the money. And I understand the free lunch and breakfast, which I think, again, the state should have done, and I'll just leave that at that and be nice tonight. But for me, it's kind of like a chicken and the egg situation. So we need our support staff to be able to help maintain and run our buildings and to help support our students. But we also need our students to be fed when it may be the only meals that they're getting during the day. I would go along with Dr. Roundtree with the 1629 because to me, it's like these people don't seem to matter as much. That's my feeling about it. And they matter. Everybody who contributes to Montgomery County Public Schools matters, and they need to be compensated and respected in the same way. So I would go with the 1629.
Okay. I guess I'll just add in there. I mean, certainly we're talking about one item, and then we're next going to go to the overall budget. But these decisions aren't in a vacuum, right? So we're talking about increasing our already proposed budget by I forgot those numbers already, but at least 150,000. Sounds like maybe closer to. I forgot what y'all said, but so I think we're going to have a bigger conversation on the budget overall. But in general, I do support raising this particular item so we can at least be more competitive with the county, right? So we're not falling behind and competing and losing over the staff that they are potentially hiring. So it would be nice if we had the exact number on the 1629 so we could incorporate that into the total budget ask we have here. But sounds like there was a consensus for 16 based on the head count that I had here. Is that?
I agree that we should vote on a dollar number that we know for the total budget. We're approximating that it's going to be another $100,000 to get it to 1629. How about we just go with $250,000? You'll make it to whatever you can afford for $250,000. Make that the new minimum wage, and that'll be approximately 1629.
I'm looking at the math, people. I mean, that gives us a number to at least
put in the budget.
Right?
Yes.
We tell you
250,000 would roughly be
about 1629, plus minus 5 cents probably, if I'm off.
Does that seem like a fair compromise, board? Or do we want to stick at?
What does the administration
So those of
think
you
of
said
that?
16, that would be 150. So we're talking about an extra
$100,000.
$100,000.
Extra $250,000 on the budget that we were looking at 2 weeks ago.
Right. But an extra 100,000 based on folks who just nodded a minute ago for 16.
Yeah.
So 16 or 16.25? Ms. Purcell?
I think Dr. Guidry just asked and maybe got interrupted, like what is the administration's comfort with that? But that didn't get answered, did it?
Yeah, I would like
okay.
to hear from the administration.
The initial budget I presented in January was my ask. These employees went up to $15 an hour last year. They're getting a 3% raise this year. I understand everybody needs to make more money, but at some point, it's not sustainable. And we can do what we want here, and we will. As the school board, you're going to vote on this. I'm going to ask the Board of Supervisors for over $5 million in money. I already know the answer. I can't speak for them, but I know the answer. So I appreciate it, and we want to do as much as we can, but my ask was on January 7th. So I'm not asking for any more. This was a board asked me to do this and present the numbers. That's where I am.
I agree 100%. I've always kind of felt like we need to ask what is attainable and reachable. I know sometimes I'll put it out there and they don't know what we need if we don't put it out there, but I also think you have to be realistic, and this is not. So, and I'm all for making all of I constantly stand up for the ones who I feel like get forgotten, and it's on record. So I'm constantly speaking up for them. But I do believe we have to send something that's going to get accepted. And if we keep on, it's not going to. Never has been. It's not going to. So I'm going to stick with 16, and I do think that's a stretch. So no disrespect to anyone. I want everybody to make good money, but what we're looking at, what I had asked for was to be comparable to what the town is paying, what the county's paying, and we are. So, like Dr. Bragan said, this just came down the pike this past year. The 3% raise is coming. It's not like it's not happening. There will be extra funding there. So I think we need to, at this point, go with it.
Okay, so I'm going to keep a tally. So we're going to start with Ms. Bond so we can get some clear direction here. So one person in support of 16. Only 16. 2 people in support of 16. 3 people in support of 16.
Just for the record, that 29 cents is $580 a year for those employees that are making at the bottom of the salary record or the salary scale. We did ask what the county was paying so that we could be competitive. We're still not competitive, and I assume that this is the county's current rate, not the county's proposed rate. So the county's going to go up to make themselves non-competitive. The county could stay at $16.29 for a year and allow us to come up to their number. So I'm at $16.29.
Ms. Purcell?
I will stay with 16. I believe when we do send our budget to the Board of Supervisors and get what they'll give us back, we're going to be making some more decisions about what we will and won't be doing. So we've got a nice round number right there. We know definitively what it will do, and I think that's where my comfort is right now.
Ms. Franklin?
So I'm going to stay with the 1629. I'm not so much thinking about us being competitive with the county because the county has less employees than we do, and they don't have employees who do the work that our employees do. And I don't think it's comparable to, try to meet what they do. I don't know what their situation is with finding employees and retaining them, but I know what our situation is. And that also affects our students. So I'm trying to think of this as doing the best for our students so that we can hire and retain. And I know, because I've always been of the mind, ask for what you need. And we're going to get whatever the supervisors are able to give us. And as always, then we adjust. So until I have a figure that we have to adjust from, I believe we need to ask for what we really need and not what we can get by with.
Okay, thank you. And I'll lend my support into the 16 as well. Again, certainly we could have debates about how much we should be paying, but I think we can't bite off everything at once, right? We already have other significant proposals that we have in this current budget, which, as Dr. Reagan has said, has already taken his ask over what he had initially approached us to. So I think we need to be intelligent. We need to be thoughtful in terms of how much we're trying to pile on this thing. Yeah, we need to prioritize, right? So I will lend my support to the 16 as well. So that gives us a nice round number to incorporate into the budget vote that we will talk about next. Okay? Thank you for that discussion. So we've already discussed the budget multiple times, so we are up for vote tonight. I will ask for a motion, and then we can discuss, obviously. And if we don't agree on the current ask, we'll discuss until we get agreement, obviously. But I would ask for a motion to approve the FY 25-26 operating budget as presented, to include the $150K that we just approved as a group to add for the minimum wage.
Second.
So moved.
Or so moved.
Okay.
Second.
Dr. Roundtree and Dr. Guthrie. Okay, so let's go around and discuss. Everybody have a chance to talk about how they feel about where we are. Dr. Bragan, could you lend some context before we go around in terms of your conversations, like where you think they're realistically going to land?
I'm not sure I can say that, but I do know some of the conversations I did have with the county administrator was that they plan to have their raises similar to ours at 3%. Again, I can't speak for their governing body, but we are trying to all play on the same team and not fight for the same people. So I appreciate the work that Ms. Hill has done with me personally in going over the budget details and what it looks like and where we're going to land. The budget you see before you, and we talked about this briefly at the last meeting, I believe, is that the state aid number, that $81 million, was about $80 million on the original budget, because after the legislative session, we do believe that we're going to get a little bit more. So this is what our anticipated revenue is for the state, as we believe it to be. So we'd rather put that exact number there, which would represent what we do honestly believe the state's going to give us. Nothing's official until we get that done through the legislature and it gets voted on by the governor and we get those final numbers. But that number has changed, which then reduced the requirement on the county's ask. The initial county ask was over $7 million. If you see on that budget right there, it's 6.4, actually 6.5. If you had the 150,000 there, it's probably closer to 6.65, right? Is what the county ask would be. I do know in our conversations and when we attended the meeting of the Board of Supervisors, that they anticipate the growth in the county this year to be somewhere in the high 6.8 million, somewhere around there. And there may be some additional revenues from the Mountain Valley Pipeline that may bring their total growth where they won't have to raise taxes to somewhere around 9 million. Now that's the Board of Supervisors has to decide on where that money goes, how much of that we get. And if they're going to include the total amount for the pipeline, because there was discussion about that at their meeting. So if you asked me, if I'm just looking at the number and what I think they may or may not do, if our budget is 50, 60% of the county budget, we would get 50, 60% of that increase, which would somewhere land between $5 and $6 million is my estimate. But I can't, so I think somewhere in that ballpark would be good, but as Ms. Franklin said, some of the positions is say we're going to ask for whatever we think we really need and let them decide what we get, and then we would obviously come back and say to all of you, here's what the decision was, and here's the monies we have. Now, instead of these 10 items or 7 items, whatever we have to decide which ones we want to move forward with. Did I miss anything?
Great, thank you, sir.
Ms. Plan?
All right, board, who wants to start?
Okay, I'll start. Thank you for all your work on this budget. I'm good.
Thank you. Ms. Parton.
Thank you, guys, as always. I know it's not a fun time for you. So I know we need a lot of things, and I'm okay with pretty much everything that we're going to ask the Board of Supervisors for. However, I still think we're going to have to end up prioritizing just because of past budgets. And I do know that we are getting, or I'm sorry, not us, they are possibly getting some extra funding with the Mountain Valley Pipeline, but I was also told that that's not guaranteed. So I don't know if I would count that yet, not knowing that for sure, but, you know, is it a possibility that we could either get some or all of that? That's a possibility. I'm okay with this budget, but I will say again, if the Board of Supervisors tells me that the only way they're going to fulfill this whole budget is to raise taxes, I will not be okay.
Ms. Vaughn?
I agree with that as well, because the things that we have in here to save families money, if we raise their taxes, it's a mute wash. So I can't support that. I mean, I support the budget and we'll see what we get, but I still, as I've said before, I want all our students to be able to have lunch and breakfast and eat and have food, but I also see the waste. And until we can figure out how we can control a little bit of that, I do have a little bit of problem with the free student meals. But I'm going to go ahead and vote yes to the budget, just to see how it all kind of plays out. But I agree 100%. If it causes them to have to raise taxes, I won't support it.
Ms. Purcell?
I'd just like to echo what other board members have said. Thank you all so much for all the hard work that you put into this, scrambling at the holidays when the tool gets released to, present us with our first draft at our first organizational meeting, all of the changes that we've made along the way. I'm happy to support this budget. In conversations that I've had with supervisors, I don't think they're interested in raising taxes either. So we'll just see what they say after we submit it. I'm really excited about some of the new things that we'll be doing, salary scale adjustments, dual language immersion. Be really wonderful for our schools. So thank you.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yeah, thank you all for all the hard work this year on the budget. Thank you for getting us a draft budget on the first meeting of the year, so that we had time to discuss and debate about what to do. There's some really exciting things in here, as Ms. Purcell pointed out, the dual language programs, free meals or meals at no cost to students for breakfast and lunch, additional spec ed teachers, and additional items. I think that we're in the ballpark of what we can get from the county potentially. I also don't think that we should stop pushing on the state to provide additional funds. They still have a surplus, and they should be funding education at a higher rate. And then lastly, we need to be realistic with the county and make sure that they know that there are liabilities here. There's a $5 million liability. There have been threats to cut the Federal Department of Education funding. Some of those threats in other agencies have been coming true. If we lose $5 million out of our budget, that'll be devastating to the school district. So, I'm sure that the county has federal funds as well that are liable. So, anyhow, thank you all very much, and I think it's going to be an exciting time.
Ms. Franklin?
So I agree. There are some exciting things happening with this budget. The compression of the steps is huge, but also needed. So I do still have some concerns, and one of the big ones for me is the issue around fuel. So unless I missed something, there's still no line item to increase fuel for next year. And I don't know about you, but my fuel bill, just for my car alone, is constantly going up. We have yet to have a presentation about the plan to implement housing our own fuel with the county, and that's a big issue for me. So, as much as I agree with many of the things that we have in this budget, I'm going to be voting no.
Okay, thank you. I guess for me, certainly thank you for all the work that has gone into this. And as Dr. Roundtree said, just having this at the first meeting, I know that wasn't easy, right? But it really has made it easier for us to digest and have these conversations. So thank you to everybody for that. I think for me, each board member has to vote how they want on this. I think it's a decision of whether you present something to the board of supervisors that you think they'll approve, or that they're not going to approve as is, and we'll be back here having this conversation later about what we're going to prioritize. So we have to do that at some point anyway, probably. But I think there's value in submitting the ask for what we think we need and seeing where it goes. So I'll be voting yes as well. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second on the table, if I'm not mistaken. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
No.
Dr. Guidry?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 opposed.
Motion carries. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, next up, the administration will present information from a recent calendar survey highlighting parent and staff preferences for future school calendars. Dr. Amanda Widener, our Director of Human Resources, is available for questions.
Good evening, Chair Hudson, board members, Dr. Bragan. At the school board meeting on January 21st, I presented information and proposed calendar drafts for the next 3 school years to you. These were drafts that were developed over the course of the first semester through the work of the calendar committee. That presentation indicated through your discussion and your questions a need for additional input about the calendar. And so the school division developed and distributed a school calendar survey that went out over the last several weeks, and I just want to share the results of those surveys so you can use that information as you consider the different drafts that are in front of you. So there's just some data from the school calendar survey that we did recently. So there were 1,526 responses. You can see that the vast majority of those responses come from parents, which was, I believe, something that you were hoping to see, more input from our parents. You can also see the breakdown from our communities. So we did get input from all of our communities. There was some discussion over the length of breaks and when breaks should occur. So just some data there that was produced from the survey. On winter break, should winter break be 10 days for students, as it was this year, or as we have done in previous years, should it be 12 days for students, which would be 10 days for staff? And here we clearly have a preference for a longer winter break with the 12 days. Spring break, there were a couple of questions that came up. Traditionally, we have not always done a week-long spring break. We do have that in our current calendar for this year. And overwhelmingly, you can see there is support for a full week of spring break. One of the questions that you brought up was whether or not there is a preference for aligning our spring break with that of Virginia Tech and Radford University. And so we did ask that question on the survey, and these are the results. So there is a majority, at least of the people who completed the survey, that would prefer to have our spring break aligning with Virginia Tech and or Radford if that is possible. There was a little bit of discussion around graduation, so we did ask for some input on graduation weekend and whether or not it should align with Memorial Day. For 32%, it wasn't important, but almost a majority felt it was either very important or somewhat important for graduation to fall on a different weekend than Memorial Day. And some people indicated that it didn't apply. I guess if you don't have a student graduating, it may not make much of a difference to you. So again, there's more people leaning toward keeping graduation away from Memorial Day weekend. And again, just through some of the input we received and through discussion on the calendar committee, a lot of people feel that graduation weekend should be reserved on a weekend where the focus can be just on the students. Memorial Day weekend is often a time for families, certainly a time to remember those that have served and died for our country. And so some people believe that it's kind of a conflict to have graduation weekend fall the same weekend as Memorial Day weekend. And then we just asked some feedback on the proposed calendars. There was some discussion whether we should be bringing forth a calendar of 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. So you can see the preferences there that were indicated. And then the support for the calendars that were proposed on January 21st. So although there's general support for those calendars, so I'm going to present and share with you some additional calendars, some alternatives that we've come up with. So it seems like some of the things that we at least put in those proposed calendars, there seems to be support for. Do you have any questions about the data from the school calendar survey?
I do. So I had been notified, you were aware that people could take this survey more than once, correct?
I would have to go back and look at it. It came out through our Office of Communication, so.
Right. And I have made that department aware. Nothing on that department because they did nothing wrong, but this has been an issue with us with surveys for several years prior to that, where we've had an issue with people being able to go in and fill out the survey numerous times, which is what was the case here for at least 2 or 3 days. I'm not sure when it shut down, but I know it got fixed. So there was a time frame there because I had several people contact me and tell me, why is it letting me go back in? So for me, that's an issue with all of this information, just because I take it with a grain of salt when I know it can be done more than once. And I appreciate us putting a survey out there for all the stakeholders, but when almost half of the information is coming from one district, I have a problem with knowing how the full community thinks on that as well. Mine is next to none, and then Auburn and Christiansburg is a little bit better. I know, at least in my district, I know that internet and Wi-Fi is a huge issue there. So even being able to get on a computer and do the survey possibly would be an issue. I don't know what the answer is to try to see if we can have some other ways for communication as far as other than surveys. So I just wanted to, which kind of makes sense to me as to why some of the answers were what they were when they were coming from one specific district and not. I just don't feel like I'm getting a good fair amount of representation from what I'm seeing as far as what the whole community as a whole wants from the calendar. And of course, I'm just speaking personally of what I had been told and myself, so.
We can go around. Dr. Guitry?
Thank you very much for doing the survey. In terms of the percentage breakdown, the 48, in terms of our student population, how does the survey correspond roughly to our student population? Like, of our student, and you might not know this, is this fairly representative of the breakdown of the population in the county? Is it radically skewed from representation?
I don't know those exact numbers off the top of my head, but if we were going to compare, let's say, the students at all 4 of our high schools. So I believe Blacksburg High School has approximately 1,300 students. I think Christiansburg High School has between 1,000 and 1,100 students. I believe Auburn High School has maybe 400 students, and Eastern Montgomery High School has about 300. So if you wanted to look at those proportions, that might give you an idea of that breakdown. Again, that's not going to be exact because it doesn't include our middle schools and elementary schools where the numbers might vary slightly. But
Yeah.
just off the top of my head, those are the best numbers I could give you in terms of the representation of our students within our school division.
Okay. So it's not a radical departure from if you were just to look at the high school population. So, because BHS is the largest high school in the county, so it would make sense that you would have more. And I'm not discounting the fact that there may have been people doing it more than one time, but this is the data that we have, and we have to make a decision.
I'm just sharing my thoughts.
Yeah. So thank you also for putting together a couple alternative calendars. Just one question. So there was overwhelming support, I don't say overwhelming majority support for 12 days, but you decided it was 55, almost 56%, but you decided, I think, to stick even with the alternative calendars to 10 days?
On the winter break,
Yeah.
10 days for staff, 12 days for students.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm
So all 9 calendars that are now in front of you do have that.
Okay. So.
That was a recommendation of the calendar committee to expand winter break.
Okay. So you really did try to incorporate as much as you could from the comments from the survey. Because you do the 12 days, you have the full week, it's aligned with Virginia Tech. So the majority opinions reflected in the surveys.
So on the alternative calendars that were presented on the agenda to you, so there were 9 calendars, and I know that was a lot of information to put in front of you. So just to clarify what you were looking at, the calendars that were labeled like 26, 25 draft, 26, 27 draft, 27, 28 draft. Those are the original calendars that the calendar committee developed. So those are the calendars recommended by the calendar committee. The alternative calendars, so there was alternative 1 and alternative 2 for each year. Those were alternative calendars that put in a spring break that aligned with Virginia Tech. On alternative 1, it included the spring break on the week that in March where Tech has their spring break, but it also left in a long Easter weekend. That calendar did result in fewer instructional days. So like for 25, 26, that actually reduced it from 179 to 178 days.
Yeah.
Alternative 2 put spring break in, a week-long spring break aligned with Tech, but did not put in a long Easter weekend. Although traditionally we have had a long Easter weekend with Good Friday and Easter Monday off, that's not required within our policy. Our policy says that, of the required holidays, we have to have a spring break, but it does not have to align with Easter weekend. Again, traditionally, it is something we have done.
Yeah.
So again, I wanted to give you both versions. I think the benefit with that alternative 2 calendar is it actually gets us to 180 days. So it does give us more instructional time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, I mean, from my perspective, it seems to be a good compromise to have that alignment with Virginia Tech and Radford, but to keep that extended Easter weekend, because I know that there are strong opinions about that within the community. But one of the things, another reason for possibly leaving that in there are 2 reasons, even though we do lose a day or 2, that I know one of the concerns is about proportionality of the number of days in the 4 quarters, and that if you do remove it, you've got 45, 41, 45, 49 days, so there's an 8-day difference. And I know that for some teachers and some people that makes a difference because they try to have that be more proportional. Is that true?
We want to keep the quarters as close as possible. I think it's important to realize, as we're certainly seeing this year, is that, all of these calendars have more days in semester 2. But we also tend to have more inclement weather days in semester 2.
Right. Okay. And one of the questions, and I'm not going to go on here, another reason for possibly keeping those days in April, if we don't have them in there, then there's a pretty substantial period of time without any breaks because there's no teacher work days, there's no break in there for April until, I mean, basically after spring break, and then that teacher work day on the 20th in March, there's not another break.
That's
Right.
correct.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why it might be good to keep those days in April to break it up. But I want to thank the committee for being responsive to the community feedback. There was one other thing I was going to say. Oh, I did notice, one of the questions I had is how far out we should work with on the calendar. I see that there's only 11% that thought we should do 3 years. I think that makes sense to me, not to do all 3 years at one time, even if the calendar committee works on the 3, reserve those as drafts and to bring them forward in future years makes sense to me. And just leave them as draft form, particularly that 3rd year. But I'm in support of the alternative one. I mean, that seems to me as a compromise.
And Dr. Gieter, I just want to clarify one thing about the alternative calendars with the break that aligns with Virginia Tech. They do not align with Radford, and that is because Radford and Virginia Tech's spring break, while they do fall in the same week this year, and that does align with our calendar, in future years, and Tech hasn't put out their spring breaks for the next 3 years, but they have for 26, but for 27 and 28, we can guess based on where they typically have spring break, where it would fall, but Radford has, and theirs is actually the week earlier. So with the alternative calendars, I do want to point out that the spring break does align with Tech's spring break, but not Radford's. Radford's is the week earlier.
And that's for which year is it?
All 3. So 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28. Radford's spring break falls earlier than Tech's, a week earlier.
I see. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know that. I just knew about Virginia Tech's. Okay, thank you so much, and the committee.
Ms. Franklin? Ms. Franklin, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Okay, we'll come back.
Sorry.
Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
I was coughing bad and I needed to get something to drink.
Of course.
So I'm not so sure that I agree with the 3-year calendar ahead, planning 3 years ahead, because things change and calendars may not work well. So I think 2 years ahead is ample time for folks to be able to try to plan around that. I'm not a fan of trying to align our spring break with Virginia Tech, and I've said this many times. Not everybody who works at Virginia Tech gets that spring break. So it is cumbersome for them to also be trying to find childcare and stuff and everything just because Virginia Tech has done theirs at this time. I agree with the first draft that you brought to us, except for the 3rd year. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I didn't really put any structure into this. I think let's maybe go around and just do general comments first, but then we'll go around a second time and try to have specific thumbs up, thumbs down on which version of the calendars we want, so we can give the administration some clear guidance on that in terms of what they're going to propose for a vote at our next meeting. Okay? So now this is just a general comment time, and I think folks have mostly been doing that. Dr. Roundtree.
Yeah, so I'm for aligning the spring break with the university here. It allows for people that have designated work time that don't have flexible PTO or personal time off to take off time with their family. For the other faculty or the other personnel at Tech, I used to work at Tech too. You have personal time off. that you accrue at a reasonable rate. So those people can take off, or they can get the work that they need to get work done while the faculty are out of the office, which is always nice, having work there. For the winter break, we ask, we get a majority that want the 12 days. 12 days is a lot of time for the students to be out, especially when it's following up with snowstorms where they've been out for a week and now maybe they'll be out for another week. I think we should really keep the student days out to 10 days for the winter break. And that'll give us the time off around Easter, the spring break aligned with Virginia Tech, and still the 180 days available. That's all my comments.
So that's not an option that we necessarily have in front of us, though, correct? Like all of these have the...
You'd have to take the 2 days out of the 12 for the winter break from alternative 1.
Okay. Just to be clear. Ms. Purcell?
I think given that we are kind of piloting a full spring break week this year and haven't had it yet, I don't know that I'd want to approve too far into the future, so I might be more in support of just one more, 25, 26, and then see from there. Maybe this is more of a question for Dr. Widener or Dr. Bragan. Were we to have a winter like this one next year, or a couple hurricanes that that give us some days when we can't get to school in the fall with 178 instructional days, what kind of flexibility do you have with inclement weather hours and that kind of thing?
You, Mike, Dr. Bragan, I'm sorry. Thanks.
Sorry about that. I think, and you answer that, Dr. Widener, because you know the exact numbers.
So the state allows us to count our hours, and the minimum requirement is 990 hours. So this year's calendar, which when we added in the early release day in May, we had 176.5. That equals, I think, 1,059 hours. So that gave us a pretty significant number of cushion days, to stay within that, above that 990 hour requirement. Even now, with with tomorrow's closing, I think that means we've missed 8.7 days when you count our 2-hour delay openings, and so we're still above that requirement. And so with these calendars, because they are all going beyond the 176.5, I mean, these calendars are a minimum of 178 up to 180, we would have even more cushion hours.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I feel comfortable with the 12-day break, especially that's reflected in the survey as being preferred. I'd like to have a full week off aligned with VT. Just let's try it twice and see how it goes. I think it makes sense to have long weekend around Easter, probably because there would likely be a lot of absences and need for substitutes and things like that. So I think it just makes sense to be proactive. So that's kind of where I am with the calendar. So thanks.
So I admit I'm torn on this because I feel like this year we kind of had the perfect storm, right? We had Tech and Radford align, which never happens. Mm-hmm. It lined up at the end of our grading period, which was very, very convenient. and we had Easter in a different month, where it wasn't a factor, right? So it would have been silly to have not done what we did this year. But we don't have that luxury as we look forward. And so we're looking at some of these alternatives. I guess my question, and I'm not sure who's appropriate to answer this, but what is the implication of having a spring break 3 days before the end of a grading period? Because your option 1 and 2 would require that, right? So students are going to be trucking along close to the end of the quarter, and then they're out for a week, and then they got to come back and finish out that quarter. Is that impactful, or is that MBD? No big deal, if you're wondering.
Well, and just to try to answer that was kind of the concern, and that was the perspective that the calendar committee approached it. They felt it was in the best interest of students to set spring break up so that it happened after the conclusion of quarter 3. Let's get quarter 3 done. Everybody, finishes. They know they've completed all their work, all the assignments. And then it seemed, the calendar committee's feeling was it's a natural time for a break. Just like we have winter break follows the conclusion of semester 1 and quarter 2.
I mean, logically, that makes sense to me, right? So again, I'm torn because the survey results said on one hand, a majority of folks wanted to align with the universities, but then a stronger majority liked the original calendar, which didn't align with the universities, right? So we're kind of stuck trying to tease that out. But I've got concerns with, again, if we think about our students first, right, outside of the families and stuff. I mean, I do have concerns with just the impact on that third quarter for students who are going to have to finish that grading period after being away for a week. And so, I don't know. That's what I'm struggling with.
You raised a great concern, Chair Hudson, and what the committee's focus was, and I know Dr. Wider, when she presented to the committee, she had those parameters on what the expectations were moving towards 180 days and those kind of things that were student-centered. The conversations we had, including the survey, are all adult-centered, and parents, staff are the ones that completed the survey for the most part, and not students. So I understand that, and having that break aligned with tech is convenient, but it's not what's best for kids. So that's why the calendar we put forth, we thought with the committee's input, what was best for kids. The board had some concerns about that, and I understand that, and that's why we revised it, put the survey out, and bring it back to you, but that will impact performance.
That's my concern.
It is.
If you shorten that winter break to 10 days instead of 12, and you shorten Q3 by a couple days so that it's 43 instead of 45, then you pull it all in so that the quarter's ending before the spring break.
I would concur that if that's a concern, just do 10 days instead of 12 days. Wouldn't that alleviate that problem?
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Right, no, I'm just asking for the administration to...
You have to change Q3 from 45 days to something like 42 or 43 days, but...
On the 25-26 calendar, when you look at January 1st falls on a Thursday. So that is a holiday. That's not a day we're going to bring staff back. So if we brought our staff back on the 2nd, they would come back for one day on a Friday there. Traditionally we've had those work days. Right now, we have those as the 5th and the 6th. So we could change the work days to the 2nd and the 5th and bring students back on the 6th. That gets us one day. And then the alternative would be finding that day on the other end of the calendar, which would be starting winter break on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday. But that means you're talking about starting winter break on the first day would be December 24th. So I think one of the challenges that is just where the days fall on that year.
So let me just throw in a question on this. I sent this in an email with a bunch of other questions, but I don't think it got answered. So, Matosh, keep that calendar up right there because that's the original one, right? So, unless I'm not counting right, from the first day of school on January 7th to the end of Q3 on March 19th, that's 10 weeks. That's not 9 weeks. And then on your proposed calendars, you added a spring break, but you didn't move the end of that quarter back. The quarter stayed the same. We just took a week out of that 10-week grading period. So I don't understand how that math was meant to work to begin with. That was a long quarter to begin with.
And again, the quarters aren't identical. There is some variation in them. But I think the idea was leaving that teacher workday in there. I mean, we could move it up so that the quarter ends earlier. So right now, yeah, quarter 3 is longer. But again, quarter 3 is also the quarter that we're more likely to see inclement weather. So it could end up evening out.
And that was kind of my question, is if that, the lengthiness of that was on purpose to potentially accommodate bad weather, for instance. So if that was the intention, then that makes sense. But then the other proposals then sneak the spring break before that, so we lose that flexibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So board, the second hardest thing for us to ever work on behind the budget is a calendar. So I think what I would like to propose, just to try to trend towards an answer, is let's first agree on how many calendars we want to propose tonight. So if we want to do all 3, if we want to do 2, or I think I even heard an idea of 1. Let's start with that so we know what we're talking about. Let's get a consensus on that, and then we'll talk about each calendar individually and try to get a consensus on each one. Does that seem reasonable? Otherwise, it's too many variables. Dr. Bragan's kick back, just enjoying this exercise here. Okay, so let's go around first, and let's just weigh in on how many calendars you want to talk about tonight. 1, 2, or 3? 1.
You're talking about number of years, 1, 2, or 3?
Yeah.
2.
1. So just to be clear, so in terms of year 1, that was you just want to look 1 year ahead. Is that right?
Yeah, and I'm fine to have the draft years. I mean, and one of the reasons being is that when we made the decision to have the 1 week alignment was to see how it went.
Right. I agree.
And the thing is, if we just do another year, we'll actually have that feedback. Whereas if we do 2 years, we're locked in for 2 years. And so it's kind of like that's one of the reasons for only doing the 1 year is like, let's do it. Let's get our feedback and not revert back without actually getting the feedback, both from students and from parents.
I agree. And Ms. Franklin? 1, 2, or 3?
So I'm okay with 1 or 2. It doesn't matter. I just don't want 3.
Okay. I agree with the 1 as well. I kind of had that desire. And even as Dr. Widener admitted, you're kind of guessing on the tech spring breaks moving forward anyway, because it hasn't been published. I looked for it, couldn't find it. The only one that they definitively stated was 26. So
I found dates for 26, but not 27 and 28.
So I think it makes sense to treat anything beyond that as draft anyway, because we don't know for certain. Okay. Well, then I think we just made our jobs a little bit easier tonight, because now we just have to debate about 1 calendar. So then of the 3 proposed calendars in front of us, the original and 2 proposed, I think we've heard some comments about maybe other alternatives, but let's see if there's any consensus on these 3 and then go from there. So I'm going to start with Dr. Roundtree.
Oh, I forgot my mic on again.
I'll teach you.
Alternative 1 with modifications. But we can start with alternative 1.
Okay. So just to be clear, alternative 1 was the spring break aligned with VT and maintaining Easter weekend, right? Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Purcell?
Sorry, I have a lot of drafts open and
Yeah, same.
I'm having a hard time keeping up with the right one.
Thank you, Tosh. I think she's got draft 1 up at least.
Yeah, I think I'm at the right one now. I think I'm in agreement with Dr. Roundtree. Alternative 1, maybe potentially tweaking it a little bit.
Ms. Vaughn?
Well, you know what I'm going to say.
Oh.
I don't think these calendars are aligned with what our students need. I don't think we're putting them first. I think we're putting adults first. I think we're putting staff first, and that's not what we're in business to do. And I think it reflects on the things that we're seeing. I mean, I can't support this calendar with the spring break. I just can't. So, I'm sorry.
Which part of it do you not support, just to be clear? Just having a week-long spring break?
I mean, I'm okay with the 10 days at Christmas, but just like right now, look how many days we've been out. And in 2 weeks, we've got a spring break coming up. Who's that benefit? Who does that benefit? I mean, that's just what our winters are. And I can't help but feel for our staff, the work they've got to do to play catch up, the constant having to reteach and get kids settled, and no wonder our teachers are wore out. And parents are frustrated because they're constantly having to find somewhere to do with their kids because we don't have a lot of daycare in this area. And, you know, I appreciate that one part of our district wants that so badly, but I don't know that that is what the rest of the county is wanting. And that's who my constituents are. So, you know, and I think we have to look at what's right for our students. So I just don't support a spring break.
Ms. Pardon?
I still think we need to have more instructional time, and I will always think that. So with neither one of these calendars being what I feel like we need our students to have on that, just that alone, I cannot support either one of these calendars at this time.
Dr. Guidry?
So I feel like alternative 1 is with a minor tweak. I don't think we should have teachers back on the 2nd. I mean, I don't think they would like that very much. But I think some minor tweaks. I feel like that's a compromise because I know that there are a number of community members who feel strongly about spring break, which I think is, about Easter, which is as much about parents as it is about students. I think we should give it a try. We're experimenting this year with alignment and having it for a week. There's a strong support for a week. I would like to give it a chance and before reverting back to get that feedback. So that's another reason I'm supportive of alternative 1. I still have, the same concerns about the original. Is there's a lot of disruption with the number of days that are disruptive over a 6-week period, and I don't know how that puts students first over parents because I just think alternative 1 makes the most sense especially in light of the community feedback.
Ms. Franklin?
Sorry, I'm getting my phone off mute. So until this year, for the last several years, we haven't had hardly any days related to weather during the third quarter. Yeah. It's been more with flooding. So I still think that the first draft that was put before us is one that I can support. Now, we have tried a whole week for winter break before, and for some reason, we just always forget that we've done this before. And we ran into some of the same issues where folks thought it was too long to have students out. Um, so, but for me, the original is what I can support.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess, so, I mean, right. I mean, at this point, we kind of already have a plurality, but I guess I'd be curious to know what kind of tweaks we would propose to option one that everybody kind of hinted at in there. Because again, for me, the issue still comes down to having that spring break before the end of the grading period ends. So if there's a way to push that up, I'd be in more support of option one of the original calendar. If that means we got to shorten the winter break, that means we need to tweak some stuff. But if that's not an option, I'm almost in agreement with Penny.
Can I ask a question about the days in the quarter, because they aren't all the same? Is there a reason? Where's the number of days in a quarter come from? Is that somehow mandated? Like if you, for instance, made that third quarter a day shorter, is that something you can do?
I mean, yes, I don't know that we've ever had all of our quarters align where they're identical.
Right. So if it's already relative that all 4 quarters don't have the same days, what would be the harm of, say, having the January 5th be the work day, students come back the 6th, and then the 7th, so a day early, and you made the quarter just a little bit shorter so that it ended before spring break. Would that create havoc, or is that something that can be managed? Because already quarter 2 is only 41 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's manageable. The idea is to just break it up into quarters, like you said. So, where I come from, we were pretty standard on the 180 days. So it was 45, 45, and 45, which makes 180. So somewhere around there is good. The proposal makes sense to end the marking period before the break if we're going with the break. It just makes that fourth quarter then 50 days is what it is. Right, Dr. Widener? It would make
Yes.
the other one 42, and then the last one would be 50, which is long.
But if we leave in the Easter break to break it up a little bit, that makes it a little bit more manageable. I mean, I think that's a compromise, is to have them come back a little, like a day earlier, shorten break a little bit, have the fourth one be a little longer. That way you could still end the quarter right before the break and call it a compromise.
I do know there was feedback, I believe, that we gotten about folks not necessarily wanting to start on the Tuesday like we did this year. Am I misremembering that?
No, you're definitely remembering that. And that was one of the things that we talked about at Agenda Prep, that knowing that maybe we weren't going to come to a consensus on a calendar today, that we should put it out to the public and I'll ask all of you, is anyone in any of these calendars opposed to starting on that Wednesday on August 13th so our families can prepare? Just a thumbs up or head nod, like we're looking to start on August 13th. That's the Wednesday, and we did get feedback from staff and from parents that they would rather start on a Wednesday than we did this year on a Tuesday.
Right, okay. Actually, I was looking at the wrong day, right? So that concern wasn't about the beginning of the year after winter break. That was the beginning of the school year.
Yeah, I heard that
Okay.
feedback pretty quickly.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, I think I guess, do you want a thumbs up on that now while we're debating?
If you don't mind, just so our families would know if they got to plan their vacations, when they got to be back, that no one has discussed changing that at all, from what I heard from all of our discussions and all the different iterations of the calendar. It would be that Wednesday, the second week in August, which next year is August 13th, would be the first day of school.
Thumbs up on that? So that's really just starting on Wednesday instead of Tuesday. Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
Thank
Franklin.
So in the discussions of compromise for the alternative one calendar, we also haven't discussed, so if we take those 2 days off of the beginning of the year, so the 5th and 6th, and one teacher workday on the 2nd, one on the 22nd, maybe. I don't know how we do handle that. But we haven't talked about potentially shortening the week-long spring break. So going with 3 days there, plus taking out some of that earlier time, still gets the majority of the break aligned with the university's break. We could also take out the Monday after Easter to allow for additional days in there for our weather days.
Okay, well, we had talked about that before, and if I'm remembering, on the Easter break, there was so many people out that Monday. That's why they decided to keep, now am I right by thinking that in the years past, that they had such a amount of teachers that were out on Monday or took their time off. So we decided to make sure that we had kept that Monday there, is my point, for traveling.
Yeah, I like the idea of exploring a compromise that maybe shortens the spring break in order to compensate for some of those days, right? Still align with VT,
Right.
but instead of pushing everything back towards January 1st, maybe take a couple days out of the spring break, so it's a 3-day spring break, still aligned with tech.
Yeah, what is Text 27 spring break out yet or no?
No.
No.
It'd also be nice to align things with a Gregorian calendar rather than a lunar calendar.
What just happened?
It's true. It would be nice for things to fall the same time of the year every year.
And you guys want to do this every year?
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, so I guess we need to trend towards a consensus here. Who has a suggestion?
Can I ask a question? So you said there was a little bit of flexibility on the number of days for the quarter. Because 88% do want a full week. I mean, that's almost everybody. I mean, there are just over 10% who were ambivalent or didn't have a strong opinion. If teachers came back on the 5th and students came back on the 6th, and so that 7th wasn't a day off, that would shorten that quarter so you would have to shorten the quarter by 2 days in order to end before the spring break?
The 7th is not a day off. That's the first day of school.
Right. So if you move that so that 6 would be the first day, so
Right.
rather than that, right. Is that too much of a compromise?
So that would eliminate a teacher workday at the start of the semester.
Right. But they wouldn't have to come back on the 2nd, but they would lose a teacher workday, yeah.
And what goes on in the 2 teacher workdays at the beginning of the calendar year?
So it's a combination of professional development. Usually one of those days is dedicated to professional development. And then the other day, teachers have time to finalize their grades, because grades have to be submitted. Report cards come out during that first week in January. And also just getting ready for a new semester. Particularly in our high schools, a lot of our classes, we have new courses that are starting. And so there's preparation in getting ready for the start of a new course.
So we could potentially have the PD on the 5th and allow teachers flexibility to take care of those other activities during the break for one day where they choose their day. Because, I mean, they're off for 2 weeks. They can take one day and take care of their grading and take care, I mean, we do this all the time, right? Is that something we can,
I don't know if they would have access to the building because a lot of times they're closed, right? We do cleaning and stuff like that during that time, so I don't know if we could have it that flexible where it's any day you want during those, unless you were going to do it from home.
is it possible to do those activities from home or?
I mean, anything's possible, right? Depending on what we're looking at and what we're doing, if they wanted to coordinate the things that you could do remotely.
Yeah, I'm just asking, like, if our teachers don't have laptops that are issued by the school, then it's not possible.
Well, they do.
Okay.
What if the 22nd were a professional, the PD, and then that you would have that second day, the work teach day?
December 22nd?
Yeah, if you did have the 22nd be the professional development day, and then you have on the 5th be that teacher work day, so you'd get those 2 days, it just would be the one. And the professional development would be those would be different activities than the work day, which would be preparation presumably for the new quarter. So that might be another way of dealing with that without having them to get into the building or whatnot.
It's doable. That would be at the front end of the vacation and then the back end, so we could make sure the buildings were available on both of those days, rather than in the middle, right, if we got stuff going on.
Yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, some of the feedback that I did receive is that teachers also, from last year when we had the full week, there was strong support from the teachers for having a full week for spring break. So it's true that we could make spring break shorter, but it's not only the community that wants it, but my recollection is that there was strong support from the MCA for a full week for spring break.
I think in this survey too, right? I mean, the staff, that was one of their priorities that they wanted when we had the committee.
So for me, that would be the compromise. There would be like, okay, if you want that week during spring break, well, one of the ways of achieving that without having the quarter carry over would be to have that 22nd be a teacher work day or a PD day.
Okay, so board, so just in the interest of time, let's get a consensus on what we want to do with the sub-consensus that we have on option 1 here, if that's a thing. We taking it as is, or somebody have a recommendation for it? I'm not sure there's a great option that accomplishes everything we're trying to accomplish, right?
Make winter break 10 days.
I'm not sure that accomplishes anything. When are you going to start? You have teachers come back on January 1st? You're not going to have any teachers left.
Well, no.
Right?
The 2nd. And either the other teacher workday is the 22nd, or we allow them to take care of the grading.
Well, what does that accomplish, though? That pushes back the end of the quarter by a day, maybe 2.
It brings it forward by 2 days.
Sure.
And it allows for a continuum of education. I mean, the kids out for 10 days is already breaking their education up significantly. I mean, I
guess I'm just trying to understand what you're proposing. So if we start sooner in January, say hypothetically on the 6th instead of the 7th, would the end of the quarter then end on the 18th instead of the 19th?
proposing the 5th, and you can end the quarter on the 6th. And it goes from 45 days to 41 days.
Oh, so okay, so you're also talking about shortening that semester.
Right, to the same length as Q2. I mean, there's going to be years that the calendar is not as nice as other years. Sometimes the 24th is going to fall on a Monday. Sometimes it's going to fall on a Wednesday.
Okay, is that your suggestion?
That's my suggestion.
Ms. Purcell?
Are we voting on this tonight, or are we just debating more changes?
We're just debating what we want to put forward for the administration to bring back for us to vote at the next meeting and for the community to react to between now and then.
Right.
Right?
I don't know. I'm really struggling. I think trying to force a PD day on December 22nd would be really, really difficult. As I look over the draft, which one am I looking at? Draft alternative 1, you know, having that full week of the 9th, then having a teacher workday on the 20th also. You know, that's a lot of interruption. I don't know, maybe we don't do a full week of spring break in 2026 and make it a 3-day break or something like that, which is, I don't know if that was like where that is in the bounty of compromises, but I think that's where I am right now.
I mean, if you put stock in the survey, I mean, that was the most overwhelming thing, was the week-long spring break, right? So
Isn't it? I don't know.
more so than the alignment with the university.
We have limited time
Mm-hmm.
to accomplish a lot of things. I don't know. I don't know how to make it all happen.
Yep. Okay, so given what's being debated, Ms. Bond, do you have an opinion?
I agree with Dr. Roundtree. I think Christmas break needs to be 10 days. I think we could take one of the teacher work days off of there. I think we could take Monday and Tuesday off the spring break. It still gives the 11th, 12th, 13th, and then the weekend as well. You know, we're talking about 10 days being a long break, but if you're looking at even spring break, doing a week, if you count the weekend, and I know you're not going by days like that, but if you count the weekend prior, that's 2 days that they're not touching base with school. Then the week, then another weekend after, that's still a lot of time. So that would put it at instructional time at 181 days. And I personally think we need to shoot for 180 days is what our goal was. So that's my 2 cents.
Ms. Pardon?
I could go for something more to 180. I would like to get to more than 180 because we need to. I won't go into the reasons why right now, but I never thought a week-long spring break was a great idea. I know everybody needs a break, and I just never thought we'd have a week-long spring break in high school. I never did. I was lucky if I got a week off during Christmas. And we went to school when it snowed. So I just think we need to be really careful. And if we're not careful making sure that our kids are in school when they can be, I think we're going to end up seeing more and more issues that we don't want to see. So I can agree to move towards 180 with the hopes of going over and above 180 as we move forward with the calendars and start thinking about what we need to do to get these test scores up and get our students where they need to be.
Okay. Dr. Guidry?
I'm not quite sure if there's a proposal on the floor. I'll just reiterate that there's such overwhelming support for a full week off for spring break, from both staff, teachers, community members. I'm still in support of that week, having that week off. If there's a concern about instructional days to get to 180, there's a contradiction here with what some of my colleagues on the board have proposed, because the spring break, the logic there, the rationale for having it the Friday and the Monday was, parents aren't going to be, they're going to take their kids out of school. Well, that's not teachers, that's not students first. That's, parents wanting to take their kids out. So I would say if you want the 180 days, go ahead and take away that spring and Easter weekend if you want to. But I think it's a compromise to keep that and then have the week-long spring break. And if it means that there's some break there in the continuity of a quarter, so be it. Because I do know that that the teachers still want to have that work day afterward. So I don't think that there's a easy solution.
So I guess, again, just trying to get some kind of consensus because we haven't had a definitive statement. So are you proposing keeping alternative one pretty much as is?
I could imagine having, starting a little bit earlier. If you want to have a shorter winter break, I'm fine with that. So there's, for me, alternative one, flexibility with the beginning.
Okay. Ms. Franklin?
So when you say flexibility at the beginning, are you talking about the second semester or the first semester?
I'm just talking about around the winter break, whether it's 10 days versus 12 days, whether the 22nd is a PD, or, however, just working around winter break to have the flexibility there, because there is support for the 12 days, but it's not as overwhelming as it is for having a week long for spring break. So it makes sense to me to be responsive to work with that part of the calendar.
So we did the week for spring break. We've done that before. And I can't remember exactly, but I believe some of the concerns around grading periods Mr. Hudson had talked about was an issue. And even though it sounded really good to have a whole week, I don't know that it was as wonderful as everyone thought it was. So shortening that to 3 days would help our families. So I can agree with that.
Okay. Still don't know that we really have a consensus here. But I think we need to wrap this up and move on with something. So just trying to figure out what guidance to give you, Dr. Berrigan. Dr. Widener.
I'm not really sure.
Same, right?
There's a lot of options on the table there, and what I heard was a lot of different things, was shortening the spring break, shortening the Christmas winter break. But y'all had to decide what you want. We put forth the calendar and alternatives that we thought were responsive to what our goals were, which was to move towards 180 and then get more feedback from the community when we did the survey. I don't have much to add. I don't know what else to say. Dr. Widener, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I guess, would you say that option 1 was responsive to the survey?
Yes, I would. I don't want
Yeah.
to speak for Dr. Widener, but I think that's why we put it as option 1.
Okay.
Alternative 1.
Yeah, alternative 1 was in response to the survey results.
Okay. I mean, for me, I guess that's good enough for me, right? I mean, we've kicked around a bunch of other random stuff, but we asked you to do a survey, you did it. You know, survey results are survey results, right? But we can only make decisions based on the data we got, and y'all proposed an alternative responsive to that survey, so I'd be in favor of going with this one as is, and encourage people to reach out to us between now and the next meeting if they have concerns with it, right? I'm sure they will. But
And again,
we need to give the administration something to shoot for, so.
right. And us as a board, it'd be nice for us to come up with some requirements that we want for the calendar for the next year, so that we're not sitting here trying to debate what do we want to, what do we want a week off, do we want a day off here, a day off there. And I would really like, not for this calendar, for future calendars, to even consider 8 days at the winter break instead of the 10, but maybe I'll hear back about that.
Right. Okay, so can we try a thumbs up on alternative 1 as is?
Yes.
It's fine if not, but we'll need another alternative.
Yeah, I'd still like the 2 days at the beginning of the year for the kids.
So what's your proposal? Specifically?
To have Friday the 2nd be a teacher work day, and the 5th and 6th be, or the 5th be the first day of school. It gets us up to 181 days. And it takes the winter break down to 10 days.
But you're not changing any of the other dates necessarily. So you're really just adding instructional time by shortening the winter break.
Correct, and sticking with our 10-day winter break that we've had historically. I don't want to expand the winter break. I mean, if we want to do the 1st and 2nd off as well, or the 1st, 2nd, sorry, if we want to do the 5th and 6th not as instructional days, then I would be willing to say that we let out on the 23rd instead of the 19th. But I understand why people wouldn't want to do that.
Okay, so can we get thumbs up on starting on January 5th? So going back to a 10-day winter break.
I'm good with that.
You don't have to.
That was.
You don't have to necessarily agree with the spring break, right? But just trying to agree on a calendar to move forward with, even if you're not going to approve it, right? We just got to give something, right? Okay. So it sounds like we had a consensus around that. So alternative 1, but starting on January 5th. So that adds in 2 more instructional days, which may give us some buffer if there's inclement weather, depending upon how that happens.
So January 5th and 6th would become student instructional days, and we would move the work days to Monday, December 22nd, and Friday, January 2nd.
Correct. I think that's what we're saying.
We'll get feedback.
There you go. Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you so much for enduring that. Calendars are rough. Yeah, it does. All right. Any items of unfinished business? Any items of new business?
I don't know if this is considered new business or not.
Oh,
Is Penny saying something? Anyway, with it being February being CTE Appreciation Month as well, I just kind of, we had talked about having a presentation, and we have a couple years ago, but it really wasn't, for me as a board member, what I was looking to see. It kind of just went down through what we offered in career and technical education. But, I'd like to see, what are we doing? Are our students going into the fields that they're taking the classes? What classes, have certifications, and do we have everything met for those certifications as far as like welding? Do we have that in place? Auto mechanics, are they being ASE certified? Cosmetology, we understand that by the time they're finished, they can take their state board. CNA, same difference. I think that would be neat for us to know what's happening with our career. And for me, when I was in high school, it was called VICA, but now it's called Skills USA. And I know that's a club, but that's a very important club. I mean, when I was in high school and was a big part of VICA, I went to Indiana the year Ronald Reagan was president and got to see, he was the keynote speaker for VICA. And that was a big, huge thing that I got to be a part of. And skills is the same type thing. So I'd like to know, are students participating in that? Are they going to state competitions? Are they, do they do the opening, closing, and parliamentarian procedures, those different competitions? I haven't heard anything about stuff like that. And that's a huge part of the career and tech department is those clubs as well. So, and I've had people ask me, are we doing building trades? I don't know. I don't know what class we actually offer that takes part of what used to be, masonry and things like that. And I know we don't offer those courses, but what do we still offer building trades? And what is detailed in the curriculum in building trades? So I personally, I'm not saying it's got to be next week or the week after, but maybe after the weather breaks and the menu lightens up on our agenda, I would like to see that happen for us.
I think it's a great idea, and almost like a coming out party for our new administrator of CTE,
Yeah.
Miss Atkinson. She literally just moved into her office last week, so I think that'd be a great idea.
Yeah, I dig that.
But we definitely can't do it during February.
Are you sure? Ms. Franklin?
I would also, because I agree with Ms. Bond, I would like to hear from some of the students, not just from the adults giving us a presentation. The presentation we had from our pharmaceutical students was very, very powerful. So yeah, hearing our student voices is important.
Great, thank you. Board, I had one question for you. It came up during agenda prep, but so beginning of last year, we started having our student reps give their school reports at both of our meetings. And I'm not sure if that was intentional or if that was accidental, because we weren't doing that the year before. So I just wanted to revisit that. We asked the students, they don't mind doing either way, but I think it would probably give them a little more to report on if they only had to do it once a month instead of having to come every other week. But and it might free up a little bit of agenda time. But I don't remember honestly if we made that decision on purpose or if that was accidental during January agenda prep last year. So I wanted to put that before you guys and see if you had a preference. Because the students are happy either way, so it's really up to us.
In lieu of agenda time, I prefer one.
I'm okay with one, if they're okay. They should know, I mean, I think most of them know what's coming up that month, so they could add that into their report.
And do it at the main meeting as opposed to the working. Okay. Okay.
I'm fine to consolidate.
Okay.
Same.
Good. Ms. Franklin?
I'm okay with one report. And if there's something that has gone on within that week, they can always, chime in and add that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you. Just looking for opportunities to lighten our agenda where we can. All right, are there any announcements?
I had one thing under new business.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. So our strategic plan is getting ready to expire. So I would like to know what our plans are to create the next 6-year plan.
Sounds like a great topic for a board retreat.
Okay, I'm warning this again, we keep adding things on board retreat, and we ain't gonna have time to do nothing.
At least to have a discussion about, direction and vision. Yeah, I think that's a good start. But yeah, it'll take more than just that retreat to have that conversation.
For a week to discuss.
Let's do that.
Just saying.
Ms. Franklin, any other items of new business?
I didn't hear that comment.
Penny, I said we would need a week now to discuss everything that we need to discuss. So now that you're retired, I figured you might be up for that.
A week to discuss everything? As
To
long
go
as
on a
you're
board
there,
retreat
good.
for a week.
Yeah. Sorry. So our last strategic planning was different than what we had done in the past, where basically administrators and some input from staff. This was a huge group of people coming together and in many ways also educating community and giving different perspectives even to our staff around the different aspects of the county. So, I would like to have a discussion about what process we would like to put in place to create a strategic plan.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Okay. Any other new business items, board, before we move on? I did the unfinished business, but yeah, did nobody say anything? Any announcements?
Budget will be presented Monday to the Board of Supervisors, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, just letting the people know they can come out and support our budget.
And then on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, we have a joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors about our budget. And I don't know that was on every calendar that we've had, so I just wanted to make that clear. Wear green, I guess.
We have a joint meeting with the supervisors over budget.
Is that the Gregorian calendar or the lunar calendar?
It's a Roman Catholic.
Yeah, Tasha, I don't see that one on our,
Yeah, I don't see it either.
I think, is that the liaison meeting that you and Ms. Purcell have with the board of supervisors? And then our joint meeting with everybody is, I think, the 31st, right?
I thought they wanted a joint meeting on Monday, March
Oh,
17th.
okay, I didn't know that.
yeah. I forget what conversation that originated in, but they definitely reiterated that.
On the 17th?
Yeah,
Okay.
March 17th. I don't remember why though, because the 31st would make more sense, but there was a reason.
Yeah, that was, because that's the fifth Monday.
Yeah,
Was it before they set the tax rate?
that's what it was. Yeah, yeah, they wanted to have that joint meeting before they finalized the tax rate. Okay. So, upcoming school board meetings are noted. Don't have anything scheduled until our March meeting, I believe. Yay? Where am I? All right. Do I have a motion to enter into closed session as authorized by Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia to discuss two personnel matters?
So moved. Second.
Roundtree, Dr. Guidry. In stereo. Any discussion? Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Ms. Bond? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Dr. Gitchery?
Yes.
Ms. Parton? Yes. Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Ms. Franklin, we'll call you directly, okay?
Okay. I'm hanging up.
The joint meeting on the 31st, but the 7th.